The story begins in a battle setting, and we see Wang Yanju about to face Jike Sufu. Appearing quite unconcerned, the young man with the samurai top-knot stares at his opponent. Meanwhile, the young woman with yellow eyes thinks to herself how strong the boy seems. In the audience, everyone is shocked because the young man was the first person to defeat Valkyrie since the game's release. About to attack, the white-haired girl narrows her eyes and begins to use her ultimate move, the Blade Flower Spear, driving her fans into a frenzy. Shining blue blades start flying toward Wang, who only gives a faint smirk, before starting to fly, showing he's willing to face the attack head-on. With precision, the young man begins to dodge the blades. The objects pass straight through his body without even grazing his clothes. Shocked, his opponent widens her eyes while the audience questions how that's possible. To everyone's further surprise, the young man manages to catch one of the blades, then appears behind the girl who launched the attack and subdues her with her own weapon. With the battle over, Wang is declared the winner, and the viewers celebrate his victory with cheers. Smiling amid the confetti falling on his head, the young man prepares to receive his trophy, handed to him by the girl he just defeated. She smiles and congratulates him, saying he's a true hero. We are transported to the boy's house, where he is in front of the computer, happy because Jike Sufu has now become a capturable character, which means she can now officially become his romantic partner. Suddenly, a message pops up on his screen, catching him by surprise. Annoyed, he clenches his fist because apparently something is preventing him from claiming his trophy. To solve the problem, Wang clicks the option that says yes, but that causes several question marks to flood the PC screen. Out of nowhere, a gloved hand begins to come out of the monitor, revealing soon after that it's Jike Sufu, who fully emerges and fills the room with blue lights. Apparently, Wang fell when it all happened, and still on the floor, he begins to open his eyes. In front of him is the yellow-eyed girl, and in desperation, he asks what's going on. The girl replies that there's no time to explain. As two boys enter the room, the girl says the enemies are already there. She prepares and grabs her weapon, throwing it at one of the boys, who gets hit directly. The poor guy didn't even have time to react. Seeing the scene upside down from still being on the floor, the protagonist widens both eyes and starts sweating cold. Backing away from the girl in desperation, he asks how she could attack his friend like that. But Jike Sufu, determined, only asks him to watch his back. That's when we see a horrifying red-eyed zombie about to make lunch out of the young man. Luckily, the heroine strikes the monster with her large katana and saves our boy, who still doesn't understand a thing. The two zombies now on the ground seem to be truly gone. Suddenly, their bodies go poof and turn into smoke, leaving coins behind. Stunned, Wang asks how the boys turned into zombies and then exploded into a pile of coins. Reassuring him, the young woman says he's not going crazy and that it's actually the game world invading the real world. Not believing it, the young man asks how it's possible that his school is turning into an instance dungeon. Patiently, Jike Sufu says that if he wants things to go back to normal, he must complete the dungeon with her. Otherwise, everything will be lost. While the girl was talking, Wang ran to his dorm window to check the situation outside. To his dismay, his classmates are now zombies, and if the challenge isn't completed, everyone will be permanently consumed by the game world. Bravely, the heroine jumps out the window and begins to beautifully wipe out the creatures. Meanwhile, the boy apologizes to his now-deceased friends for everything that's happening. Looking back, the girl tells him to hurry and grabs his hand, dragging him as she runs. Still confused, Wang asks why all of this is happening. The warrior then says it's his fault because in order to make money and meet player demands, a developer decided to make changes. As a result, the game world gained consciousness, and its first goal is to take revenge on all humans. Outside the school, our boy looks both ways, then asks why there are zombies in the game. But a click goes off in his mind, and he remembers there were always zombies in the game, because he had already seen them in the Halloween-themed dungeon, where there was the land of the Walking Dead, which allowed players to eliminate thousands of enemies and collect something. The boy says the young woman should have warned him earlier. Since all the zombies are very weak, clearing the dungeon will be like taking candy from a baby. A zombie with a kind of chainsaw with two blades comes toward him. With his broom, yes, a broom, Wang prepares to attack fully confident. But obviously, the zombie easily breaks his broom with its weapon. Shocked and scared, the young man asks why the creature has such a weapon if it was meant for humans. Out of nowhere, wheels are heard speeding toward them. It's a zombie sitting in an electric chair that charges the ghost teenager. With nothing else to do, Wang starts running behind Jike Sufu. The young woman then says she already explained that all of this is happening because it's a revenge plan by the game world. Soon the monsters will treat them as weak, thus reversing the roles. The heroine observes the horde of monsters in front of her, showing some concern in her gaze. But her slight worry quickly fades when she starts using her power. The problem is she has already used a lot of mana, and if that keeps happening, things will go very badly. Turning to look at the boy, who is trembling non-stop, she concludes there is no other way. Interrupting her thoughts, a zombie attacks her with a powerful weapon. To save herself, Jike Sufu jumps backward, and the creature strikes the ground, cracking it. This angers the white-haired girl. Grabbing Wang's hoodie, she decides to get out of there immediately. Arriving at another place, the young woman tells the boy that her mana is running out, so if he wants to survive, he will have to trust himself. The boy turns and asks how to do that. Using a different power, the heroine says she will grant him her blessing to awaken his true power. Getting closer, Wang shows he likes what he heard, because receiving the blessing of a Valkyrie means they are now indeed in a relationship. Without saying anything, Jake Sufu begins the fusion process, causing a red lightning bolt to fall from the skies, which catches the attention of the zombies. All-powerful, the boy realizes that his clothes have transformed into his in-game skin. Explaining, the young woman says she used the power of her blessing to help him break the final barrier between reality and the game, which means he became a seer from that moment on. Suddenly, the talent reset system opens and informs him that before each battle, Wang can increase one stat. Face to face with a giant target, the young woman asks the boy to choose a talent. Grabbing a dagger, our boy doesn't think twice and throws the weapon, unable to contain his excitement. Showing he's lucky, he hits the spot that grants him the right to obtain an S-rank weapon. Thus, the boy receives a flamethrower and decides he will make the most of the artifact. Zombies appear running at full speed, but Wang, now prepared, begins shooting at the monsters. Thinking to himself, he says he's only doing this to his classmates to turn them back into humans, so he will burn them all until they're crispy. Without any pause, Wang keeps shooting flames. All the zombies scream in desperation and begin to vanish, leaving coins and other items in place of their rotting corpses. Satisfied with what he's done, our boy realizes he really can fight as if he were inside the game. However, Jack Sufu warns that she only gave him the blessing because it was an emergency, and besides that, his level is still low, unlike in the game. Showing he doesn't care, the protagonist states that his level doesn't matter because he only needs to clear the dungeon for everything to return to normal. The young woman agrees, and he then apologizes while saying he will continue using his weapon and doing whatever is necessary, which in this case is burning all the enemies until only ashes remain. Observing the success of his attack, Wang says that, as he predicted, the rewards keep coming, because he made good use of environmental damage, a technique he used when he was at a lower level, since such environmental damage ends up causing fixed damage that ignores base defense. Thinking to herself, Jake Sufu says that it's a silly but useful trick, which shows that the boy really understands the game. Approaching her, the boy says that only approved partners receive the blessing, so he needs to know if he should call her his wife. The young woman pushes him toward the fire and says once again that she only did it because it was an emergency. But upon realizing that Wang was really going to fall, she grabs his hand, while asking if the young man is okay. Giving the thumbs up, our boy says he's more than fine. Climbing back up while looking at the chaos below, he thinks it was a close call. Looking around, Jake Sufu notices something doesn't seem right. Suddenly, they plummet. On the ground, the young woman concludes that the invasion of the game world seems to be spreading more deeply, because what used to be the city has now turned into the game world. Wang says he understands and only asks if she could get up because she's crushing him. Standing up, the boy warns that they have company. Zombies begin emerging from the ground, and to make things worse, the flamethrower can't be used anymore since the place is full of flammable items. Opening his panel, our boy looks for something he can use, while the heroine says it seems like his power has grown. Smiling, he hands her a mana potion that informs her that his weapon is only good at short to medium range, so she'll have to handle the enemies farther away. Jake Sufu says she understands and that she won't miss any of those horrible monsters. Grabbing her katana, she tells the boy to get ready because the enemies are approaching. Getting the message, Wang starts firing flames. From somewhere above, we see a zombie sniper who has the boy perfectly in his sights. But before he can shoot, he's fatally struck by the heroine. Side by side, the boy says that, as expected from his wife, the two of them make a great team. Blushing, the young woman says she's not his wife and asks him to stop calling her that. Suddenly, the protagonist realizes his flamethrower is overheating and needs time to cool down. Grabbing the heroine's hand, he says they'll make a tactical retreat through terrain that looks like a maze. Nervously, Jake Sufu asks him not to run like a headless chicken or he'll end up tripping over monsters. Confident, Wang says he's familiar with the path since it's identical to the one in the game. Suddenly, two zombies appear, blocking their way. Actually, they're two female zombies who approach while humbly asking to dissect the youngsters. Happily, our boy notes how the creatures are prettier than in the game, and his wife tells him to get a grip. Obeying, he grabs his weapon and pulls the trigger without thinking twice, launching powerful flames at one of the creatures. However, she walks through the fire and attacks him with her huge hand, or rather, her huge claws, leaving Wang baffled as to how that's possible. The heroine decides to take the lead and throws her blue blades while asking the boy if he's okay. Showing he's in pain, our boy concludes that since his stats are low, he still can't defeat those monsters, and trying to do so caused him to enter a pain state. Turning around, the young woman warns him of an imminent attack. With her huge claws, the zombie prepares to finish him off. The boy thanks her for the warning and turns around. Using one of his feet, he prevents the creature from grabbing him, and apologizing for what he's about to do, he aims at her face, releasing a large burst of flames in sequence. Still in pain, he thinks that as he remembered headshots cause critical damage, it's just a shame how hard it is to aim with a flamethrower. Jake Sufu approaches, slightly worried, and says she thought he'd be careless when dealing with female monsters, but she was wrong. Smiling, the boy says that if he's right, just eliminating those two monsters will be enough for him to level up, which will allow him to restore his HP and heal. As he does this, he realizes he earned extra bonuses. Namely, a skill called Happiness falls from the sky and 4 additional points in all of his attributes. Immersed in the situation, the pair doesn't even notice they're being watched. From the top of a tree, a bat says he's finally found the damned intruders, revealing himself to actually be a vampire who can't wait to taste Jigsufu's strawberry juice. Continuing their path, the 2 youths arrive in front of a church lit in red tones. They open the door and bats fly out. On his throne, the vampire says they did pretty well to find him. But since they dared to invade his domain, they'll get what they deserve. The door behind them locks. Turning forward, Wang feels something is off with that vampire, because he looks like the janitor from his school, Old Gold Tooth. Surprised, the young woman says it seems even the boss character has fused with someone from real life. Standing up, the horrifying vampire breaks the goblet in his hand and asks the girl if his gold teeth aren't amazing. Ready to attack, Jigsufu calls him disgusting. And launching her blue dagger, she promises to rip all those teeth out of the creature's mouth. Easily blocking the strike, the vampire laughs. Counterattacking immediately, he says her attacks are far too weak. A misty form surrounds the heroine, which worries her because their natures are opposites. Appearing behind the girl, the vampire tells her not to worry because it won't hurt. Wang shows up and lands a solid punch on the monster, telling him not to touch his wife. On the ground, the vampire laments losing his gold tooth, which had been in his mouth for a long time. Holding Jigsufu in his arms, our boy declares that he won't let the monster touch a single hair on the young woman's head. Charging at the boy, the monster says that in that case, he'll eliminate him first. Wearing a confident grin, the boy mocks the enemy for using the same old trick, stating it's useless against him while firing his flamethrower. Irritated, the vampire wonders how he could have been hurt while in his mist form. Explaining, Wang says his weapon is a flamethrower that deals magical, not physical damage, the kind the vampire isn't immune to. Angrier than ever, the creature lunges forward, declaring that he can finish Wang in his natural form. Dodging the attacks, Wang says they're too weak, leaving the vampire confused. Our boy then says he's familiar with the monster's attack pattern because he died 5 times in that stage when the game launched. But this time will be the 772nd time he finishes him off and he fires again. 1 minute later, we see the vampire turn into a crispy snack. Approaching Jigsufu, the boy asks if he did well, and the young woman tells him not to get too excited just for killing a boss, while thinking to herself that she would like to reward him for saving her. Opening his panel again, our boy realizes he earned a rare material, Vampire's Ancestral Gold Tooth X1. Suddenly, everything begins to shake, and his companion says that's not good because it looks like the fusion between the game and reality is becoming unstable again. As things collapse, a rock falls right onto our boy's head, knocking him out. When he opens his eyes moments later, he realizes he's lying on something soft, but this isn't a dream. A voice then asks if he had a nice nap. Looking ahead, he sees a huge blonde woman with red eyes. Backing away, Wang asks if she's the wife of the vampire he killed, and what she's doing there. Standing up, the vampire woman tells him to put away his silly toy, the flamethrower, because it's time for a meal. Sweet and cold, the protagonist admits he's not liking where this is going. The woman approaches and nearly strikes him. Wang tries to grab his weapon but is stopped by a large foot wearing a red high heel. Looking down at him, the woman tells him to stay still if he doesn't want to be crushed. Trying to escape the vampire's flirtation, our boy says he already has a wife. Unbothered, the creature grabs him by the clothes as he begs for Jigsufu to show up. Suddenly, boots smash open the door, and the young woman appears, explaining that they've been teleported to another area of the game. Seeing the scene, she asks what's going on, and the boy says he can explain. With a wicked look, the vampire woman says that the girl's husband now belongs to her. Replying, Jigsufu says she's not the boy's wife and that the woman, being high-level, shouldn't even be there. Smiling, the creature asks if she really thinks she's the only out-of-the-ordinary NPC. Then launches an attack that makes vampire bats appear and fly toward the girl, who tries to shield herself with her arms while thinking that everything is lost because the woman is too powerful. Wang panics while the enemy, still holding him, says now that she's taken care of the girl, he's all hers. Surprising both of them, the heroine reappears and asks who she was talking about when she said she had taken care of someone. Irritated at being underestimated, she decides to use her most powerful move, declaring that the woman should feel honored. Playing dirty, the vampire tells her not to get closer if she doesn't want her husband to suffer. Changing strategies, Jigsufu decides to use the Sun Spear, an S-rank weapon. Just looking at the artifact already makes the enemy reveal she's starting to feel weaker. To protect herself, she decides to use her shield, but the boy kicks her while saying he tricked her when he pretended to be charmed by her. With her shield broken, the vampire asks if he really thinks she doesn't have the guts to annihilate him. Wang smiles and mocks her, claiming his wife is way better than her as he dodges all her attacks. Ben reveals he was only distracting her so Jigsufu could fully charge her attack. Because her true strength is cooperation, when hit directly, the vampire begins to scream. The panel opens and announces that our boy now possesses the essence of the vampire lord. Running, he hugs his ally, ready to give her a peck, saying how much he loves her and how they're the perfect match. However, the young woman shows she's not feeling well after using too much energy. Being held by the boy, she explains that her core data was damaged, so she needs to rest, then asks him to wait for her in the next battle. Out of nowhere, an old man with a wicked smile appears and asks what they're doing there. It's the school principal. He approaches and grabs the girl's hand, claiming he needs to take her to the infirmary, while the boy tries to explain. Wang then notices there's a health bar above the man's head. Telling him to wait, the boy says he's not really the principal. His hunch was right, and the man transforms into a red-eyed creature that looks like a bizarre kind of plant. Grabbing his weapon, our boy realizes the monster must be the final boss of that dungeon. So if he finishes him off, the world will return to normal. Smiling, the strange fern asks if he really thinks he can destroy his kingdom, claiming that the school is his playground and Jigsufu trapped in his tentacle as his new toy. And since her level is low, she can't do anything to stop him. Screaming, the protagonist orders the monster to release his wife, then fires his weapon to roast the plant. To protect itself, the creature opens a hole in its body and begins to absorb the flames, then morphs its trunk and starts firing green slime balls at the boy. A large explosion occurs and we lose sight of Wang for a moment. But the boy soon reappears, apparently intact, just a bit tired and out of breath. Determined, the monster begins preparing its next attack, showing he's not playing around. It launches a large glowing green ball toward our boy. Seeing it coming, the young man tries to think of what to do. The ball hits its target and Jigsufu, still trapped, watches everything with deep concern. Convinced, the creature says now that it has expelled the boy from his school, it can take care of her. But unfortunately for him, Wang reappears and mockingly says that Fireball wasn't even enough to warm him up. Using what appears to be his partner's katana, he charges the enemy, whose tentacles are sliced as the boy catches the young woman in his arms, keeping her from falling. Smiling, he says he'll always be there to save his wife, and she asks him once again not to call her that. Looking back, the young woman tells the boy to stay alert because the battle isn't over yet. Furious, the boss launches new tentacles and asks what he'll do now without his powerful weapon. Dodging the strikes, Wang questions if the monster really thinks he depends on S-rank weapons, then states that even a regular iron sword is more than enough to send him to eternal rest. As he unleashes his attacks, the boy says the creature has no idea how hard he worked just to finally meet Jigsufu, let alone how much one needs to understand the game to win her over. That's why, having gone through it all, he knows even a piece of wood is more than enough to win. Annoyed by all the mockery, the monster says that even so, all he has is a pile of junk. Opening his panel, our boy declares he doesn't need anything else because he can see all its weaknesses at a glance. Hearing all that pushes the monster to its limit and launching another attack, he promises to burn the boy until he's crispy. Narrowing his eyes slightly, Wang asks how the creature dares use that kind of attack, since if he interrupts it, it'll cause massive damage to the monster. The boy does exactly that, and the monster begins to scream in pain. But even completely destroyed, the boss keeps saying he will expel the boy from the school. Grabbing a large sword, our boy says it's time to finish the fight and earn XP and gold coins. Suddenly, freezing knives begin flying toward him. Screaming, Jigsufu tells him to pay attention. The boy then dodges the attack, and the knives hit the creature, who can't believe it. Looking back, Wang asks who dares to steal his kill. Footsteps are heard, and two girls with purple and blue auras appear. Our boy realizes one of them is the most beautiful girl in his school, Rumaman, and asks what she's doing there. Intrigued, his ally asks if he knows her. The boy replies that she's known for being one of the school's bullies. The pink-eyed girl asks her friend if she knows the boy staring at them, but the other says not really, because they're just schoolmates. Getting closer, Wang realizes the other girl is Xiaobi Lugia, the magic class instructor from the game. Since he touched the girl's head, she gets annoyed and tells him not to touch her again. As he steps back, Wang notices something shining on the ground. It looks like a legendary gold item dropped by the principal. Opening his panel, he wonders what key it could be since he didn't know the item existed. To stop him from picking it up, the two newly arrived girls tell him not to do anything because the item will bring him nothing but trouble. But it's too late, and suddenly something appears. It launches the boy far away with what looks like a punch. A terrifying woman appears, celebrating the fact that she managed to get close, saying the boss from before was weak. Grabbed by the neck, the boy asks what Ruby, the fallen Valkyrie, is doing there if that's not her battlefield. Smiling, the woman doesn't answer and asks if he's not the one who defeated Jigsufu. Now recovered, the boy's ally appears and tells the woman to let go of him unless she wants to die. Ruby asks if the girl really thinks she can defeat her, even after betraying the will of the game, especially when she's only level 50. Stepping in, Wang says his wife is still better. Hearing that deeply irritates the woman, who says he asked for it, clearly about to attack. Before delivering a powerful punch, she also says she'll make sure he's so dead that he won't be able to resurrect. But luckily for our boy, a shield surrounds him and blocks the attack, which negatively surprises the red-haired woman. Someone then says that happened because they picked up the dropped item, causing the game to register the rewards. It's Rumaman, who declares that from that moment on, the woman can't harm anyone anymore. Mocking, Wang says Ruby was so focused on him that she didn't even notice what was going on. She realizes she was tricked and, extending her hand, says the boy should consider himself lucky this time. but that in their next meeting, she'll finish them all one by one, disappearing into the portal she opened right after. Celebrating, our boy says he received his rewards too. Thus, after all that, the school returns to normal and we see the janitor, who, unaware of what happened, wonders how his gold tooth suddenly vanished from his mouth. Meanwhile, the principal is in his office wondering what he ate to make his stomach hurt so badly. Happy, the protagonist thanks Mammon, saying he never thought the school leader and he would be friends one day. But the young woman says she doesn't know what he's talking about, while Xiaobei tells her to just ignore him. Jag Sufu appears and says that Wang must have some important questions for the girl with glasses who took the key. Agreeing, the boy asks where the item came from, since it never existed in the game. Explaining, the girl says the key is an important object that prevents the real world from merging with the game world. Therefore, the person who holds it will be considered an enemy of the game and hunted by it forever. Intrigued, she says it's strange the boy seems to know nothing. The protagonist's ally then apologizes for not explaining this situation earlier. Doing so now, she says that both her world and the boy's world are real. But the game world, due to its resentment, uses its dungeons to attack the real world under the control of an unknown power. If no one intervenes, the real world will be destroyed, while the game world will be fragmented. Joining the explanation, Xiaobei says that to protect their home, the NPCs became self-aware, because they believe that the path to stop the game's invasion lies in a mysterious and unexplored place called the Floating Island. So if the important keys are collected, it will be possible to open the passage to that location. Understanding the situation, Wang asks if that means he would be helping to save the video game world. Jag Sufu then apologizes for having involved him in that problem, and says it's not too late for him to resign the contract since she can find a way to deal with Ruby herself. Smiling, the boy says he's touched by the girl's concern, but his answer is no. Surprised, Ru Manman asks why he wants to fight so badly. After all, this battle puts him at great risk. Wang responds that he has two main reasons not to abandon the mission. The first being the fact that he is the strongest player in the game and can beat any level on the first try, so he's not worried at all. The second reason is his wife. After all, where else could he find a girl like Jixufu? Annoyed, the girl starts hitting him and the boy says he was just joking. With his cheeks red from the small punches, he says he's not good at anything except playing. And now that it's possible to save the world by playing, he can't miss the opportunity, especially doing it alongside his wife. Irritated, Ru Manman says she hates otaku boys like him and asks that he stay away from her in the future. But for now, she accepts the protection offered. Suddenly, the school bell rings. Worried, Wang asks what to do about his ally and Xiaobei, since that will attract attention from the other students. The girl with glasses then tells him not to worry because her father is the school principal and she has a solution. Sometime later, Jag Sufu asks the protagonist if he's sure she should wear those clothes. We then see the two girls in school uniforms, while the boy takes photos of the white-haired girl non-stop, saying she looks beautiful. Suddenly, other students appear and ask who the pretty girl next to Wang is, getting annoyed thinking she might be the boy's girlfriend, which means he's really lucky. Approaching our boy, the heroine asks if he can find a place for them to be alone that night, because there's something she wants to tell him. A bit awkward and shy, the boy says he'll take care of it. Later that night, we see the protagonist waiting for his beloved on the sports field, which is a quiet place. Jag Sufu arrives and attacks the boy with one of her blades for asking about something indecent. She then says that, as expected, he reacts quickly and must prepare for a special training session. Grabbing his weapon, Wang asks if that's why she called him there, then says he's already mastered all the game's abilities. Explaining, the girl says she'll teach him a skill that only a Valkyrie and her partner can use, but together. Far from there, Ruby sits on a rock, irritated for being stopped by our boy, saying he's making a big mistake by thinking hiding in the real world is safe, because since the school has merged with the game's space, she knows exactly how to get there, and can finally take the key from the two girls. Back to Wang's training, he asks what his ally means by dual cultivation. Excited, he says his heart isn't ready for that. The girl responds that the dual cultivation she means only involves training together, since her goal is to help him develop potential through battle and master data awakening. The boy is confused but begins being attacked by the girl from all directions, needing to be very quick to dodge. His ally explains that data awakening is a unique skill that can transcend levels, equipment, and attributes. So only by mastering this skill is it possible to close the massive level gap and defeat opponents. Otherwise, sooner or later, Ruby will kill him. That's why she prefers to take care of him personally. While she's talking, the girl throws a huge blue sword toward the boy, but to her surprise, her strike is blocked. Using his power, the boy stops the sword and says he understands, but she doesn't need to scare him like that. Then reveals that he can see both his HP bar and hers. Shocked, Jag Sufu asks how and when he awakened. Wang then charges forward with his sword, and subduing the girl, replies that it was at that very moment, because ever since he learned about the fusion of the two worlds, his desire to experience game abilities in real life has only grown. Assuming it only took him hearing his ally's explanation and boom, it happened. Annoyed, the young woman says that was just a basic awakening, and that there's still much to learn. Rising from the ground and releasing his power in blue waves, the boy asks if she was referring to that awakening. With her hair flying from the power surge, the young woman tries to shield her eyes. Suddenly, the duo sees an explosion in the distance and wonders what's going on. At the explosion site, we see Ru Manman and Xiaobei fighting someone. It's Ruby, who smiles and asks if that's all the girls can do, since the attack didn't even scratch her. Nervously, the girl with glasses says she used all the potions she had, and her friend, surprised, says she didn't expect the woman to get there. Preparing a super attack, the enemy asks if those will be the duo's final words, and Manman begs Xiaobei to cast an ice wall urgently. Using a magic book, the girl begins calling upon the power of frozen earth to protect them, creating a stone barrier, but Ruby asks if they really think that will stop her. The woman charges forward, claiming that with just one strike, the barrier will shatter like glass. Getting close enough, she kicks the pink-eyed girl and tells her to get out of the way, then says that once she eliminates her ally, she'll blow her up next. Turning to Manman, she demands the key if she wants to live, but the girl refuses, and ends up getting slapped as the enemy reveals she'd never let her live anyway. Since players never felt the pain of being wounded by blades in the game world, now things are different. And finally, she'll make the girl experience that pain. Grabbing her cursed sword, Ruby says she's going to do it nice and slow. Soon the girl will get the full experience of being on the losing side. Turning around, Manman warns that the woman will regret it because Wine promised to protect her. Suddenly, blue blades fly toward the enemy, and a voice says they made it just in time. We see our boy and Jeek Sufu, who apologize for the delay, stating that heroes only show at the last second. Annoyed, Ruby says in that case, she'll annihilate him first as revenge for his earlier mockery. Beside her husband, the yellow-eyed young woman says the redhead better not underestimate the boy, who's now mastered a new power. Mocking, the red-haired creature asks if the girl doesn't want the first hit. But Wang steps forward and asks if she didn't hear what his wife just said, that he alone is more than enough to wipe her out. Worried, Manman asks if this will really work given the level difference, and her ally says the boy must have his reasons. Attacking first, Ruby says the protagonist talks too much. With all her fury, she charges at him with her flaming blade. But her strike is blocked by Wang's glowing blue sword, leaving her stunned. Drawing another weapon, she attacks again, unleashing a flurry of blows, all blocked once more. Furious, the woman wonders how this is possible. And using her doppelganger technique, she multiplies, saying she wants to see how he'll handle 3 of her. Wang responds that in that case, he'll be nice and split her into 3 pieces. Confused, the woman asks how he could identify the real her, since all 3 look the same. And she doesn't remember any player ever recognizing this ability so quickly. The boy realizes that while the appearance is identical, the data quantity between the real body and the clones is vastly different. He says he can clearly see the data weakness now that he's mastered it, concluding that he knows her body like the back of his hand. Irritated, she calls the player despicable. She then says the boy's gear is trash, and even if he hits her, he'll end up getting hurt. Mocking, the man asks who said he was going to hurt her. He grabs her and says he discovered her greatest weakness is being ticklish. Moreover, he says he knows all of her weak spots. Desperate, she begs him to stop tickling her while laughing uncontrollably. Watching the scene, 2 girls ask if a third had predicted this situation, and she replies no. Unable to take it anymore, the woman says she surrenders to the boy. He accepts and asks her not to cause him any more trouble. The young woman then asks if he isn't afraid she'll stab him in the back and kill him. The man doesn't care and says that because she's a Valkyrie, he will keep his word. Irritated, she turns her back and says she will remember that when she becomes stronger and has to deal with the boy again. She leaves the place promising revenge. Watching, the boy says it was a good job expected from a good player. The duo approaches the boy who dealt with the Valkyrie. Introducing himself, the boy says his name is Stinky Jianwu and by his side is his partner Qianfeng. Recognizing the duo, the boy says he knows them, leaving Xingqi surprised by the information. Laughing, Qianfeng asks the player to give her 1,000 copies of Ironwood and Herbs. He then realizes that she is the NPC who issued a super difficult gathering task that made him cut trees and dig for weeks. Xingqi realizes he is talking about his partner. Laughing, he says that the 2 are players who recognize each other because of their characters, and that the players have an organization called Tianxia that helps them fight together, and asks if they are interested in joining. Curious, the boy asks if it's something like guilds, and the girl adds that the more players join, the more chances they have to save the world. Xingqi says she's right and asks if the boy ran out of medicine after fighting the Valkyrie. 2 girls are gifted with medicinal potions. They drink them and thank for the gift. Quickly, both recover energetically and listen to the explanations about the organization being more efficient than fighting alone. The young man says that as long as the 2 are fine with it, they should follow him. He says the boss is waiting at the location, but since it's a construction site, it draws attention. Then they hear a voice asking if that wasn't the strongest player, and they are surprised. At the top of the building appears a young man and a girl, and he says it's been a while since he saw a challenge among players from all servers. Looking up, the boy in purple clothes recognizes him as the reincarnated king. Annoyed, he says not to call him that anymore. Then he says he didn't expect the choice of those NPCs, considering he had a strong Valkyrie as a partner. They then introduce the leader of the Tianxia group, and the group is surprised by who the leader is. Curious, the girl accompanying the leader asks if the boy was the strong player mentioned earlier, and she says that if he joins the group, their positions could be at risk, so the young man asks what to do. The girl suggests they ask him to hand over his partner Jigsufu. That way, he'll be hitting two birds with one stone. After the suggestion, the young man says he allows the youths to join the group, but he will have to hand over Jigsufu. The person approaches, asking if Period has lost his mind. It's the purple-haired young man who asks if he really thinks the opponent would hand over his wife. Not liking the answer, the leader says that either way, he will steal the girl from him. Then they decide to fight, but something catches Yangshu's attention as one of his friends doesn't feel well. He realizes the girl is poisoned and wonders how that happened. Quickly, he remembers the medicine they took and tells Janwook there was something in the potion. The boy says not to blame him and that this happened because he challenged the boss. Laughing, Period says the opponent is in no condition to fight. Yangshu says he refuses and that he enjoys saying no to arrogant people like the opponent. Then the leader says they will fight. Jumping off the building, he claims he will use that opportunity to settle old scores and gives orders for them to fight to the death. Besides that, he says that if he wins, Jigsufu will be his. The two begin fighting and exchange taunts. Period tries to approach the woman, but he tells him not to dare come near. She also questions why they are fighting each other instead of joining forces to help the world. The boy in purple clothes asks if they know what would happen if the worlds merged, and that things from the game world would come into the real world, which would be something beneficial. With that, the old social order would be destroyed, but the chosen players would continue fighting and leveling up to survive. Thus, the best players would be the only hope for ordinary people. They would have to believe in the chosen ones and treat them like gods. Laughing, the blonde young man says that way, everyone would have to obey his orders. Hearing all this, Yangshu asks if that's why the opponent conspired against Mammon and killed the other players. They say the beautiful girls from the game would appear in real life. At that moment, both agree it would be a good strategy, but Suvim, the purple-haired youth, corrects himself and says it wouldn't be. Then he asks if the opponent knows how many people die because of that decision and declares he will stop him. But the opponent mocks him, asking if he can perceive the high level he possesses. With that, Yangshu realizes he will need to level up to fight the young man. The two continue to battle intensely. The young man in purple clothing says he knows the opponent's level is higher, but he believes Period never cared about improving his intelligence. Stammering, the leader asks what he is talking about. Smiling, Yangshu says he didn't pay attention to the columns of the abandoned building, and that it is time to observe some laws of physics. Quickly, the building collapses and the blonde youth is trapped under the debris. Before Yangshu could leave the area, something catches his attention. There is a boy behind him holding Xiaobei by the arms, but the other group members gather to defend the girl and state that he couldn't handle so many high-level gamers. The boy in purple clothing tells Rumaman and Xiaobei to leave the area. Laughing, he asks why he should give up so easily and release the girl. He says he intends to have fun with her. Xingxi hugs one of the girls and says she doesn't understand his charm. Calling him reckless, he says that if the boy cares too much about his companions, he will only be distracted. The pink-haired girl tries to help her friend but has her leg restrained. She is thrown far away by Yangshu. Before she could escape, the boy grabs the girl by the arm and informs the leader that he captured his partner. Irritated, Period questions how the opponent dares use underhanded tactics while rising from the rubble. He is shocked by the scene he witnesses. Desperate, the girl asks her leader for help. Yangshu commands the boy to ask his ally to release his friend. With sarcasm, the pink-haired girl questions why she's being treated as weak and says that if she shows her true strength, everyone will be surprised. Quickly, Period agrees to the proposal and asks them not to harm his partner. They say that this is his chance to get what he wants. Moments later, the hostages are freed and ask if they are all right. Crying, Aju says that Yangshu intimidated her. Then the protagonist calls out to Period and says he remembers what he did earlier. The boy mocks him and says the opponent does not scare him. Later, the boy in purple clothing is at Mammon's house, talking with his friend. He says the other two girls are in shock from what happened and need to rest. Sad, the white-haired girl said she was the one who suggested the alliance with other players. Yangshu tells her not to worry or blame herself. Concerned, the protagonist says they made a lot of noise when they encountered Period and wonders if anyone recorded them. Checking his phone, he realizes that images are circulating. On the news, the presenter reports that strange creatures have been sighted around the world, and since their appearance, the giant creatures have been causing destruction. Furthermore, the number of such figures has already exceeded 4. The monsters have also started appearing in the sea, not just on land. Desperate, two children cry and ask their parents for help. Watching the news, Yangshu says this is not a joke and seems like the prelude to the end of the world. The presenter says it looks like the creatures came from the game of 1,000 girls. Frightened, the protagonist returns home and tells his partner that the monsters have invaded the city. He says he cannot sit still and must take action to help. Concerned, the girl asks if he will go alone, and the boy says she needs to stay and take care of Chiobi and Mammon. He asks her not to worry as he is the strongest player. As they say goodbye, the girl asks him to take care. In a cabin, someone calls for Aju. It is Period, who is with the girl, and they talk about Yangshu. The girl thanks her companion for saving her, but she mentions that her leg is hurting a lot and asks for a massage. In love, the boy says he will give her a massage. Thoughtfully, the young woman reflects that men are easy to manipulate and plans to use him to eliminate more players. Both continue chatting and showing affection inside the cabin. Outside, two boys talk about the monsters that came into the real world and the possibility of gaining experience by defeating them. In the cabin, the couple continues their conversation. The boy with glasses thinks the leader intends to destroy all the monsters. Far from there, a castle appears and someone apologizes to Lord Baya. It is the Valkyrie who says she was wrong and begs for forgiveness. The girl goes on saying she deserves to die for what she did. Lord Baya asks if she knows what the key does. He explains that it is not just an item that prevents the fusion of worlds and the reason she couldn't succeed. Valkyrie explains that the opponent's level was low, but he knew her movements and that if she has one more chance, she will kill him. Desperate, the young woman says she was wrong, but the Lord says he has already sent Quilu to finish the job. The information makes the woman angry, since she will not be able to take her revenge on Yangsu. In the city near the buildings, a loud noise takes over. The monsters keep invading and a girl falls to the ground scared. The protagonist says for her not to worry and that he is on his way. To save the city from the giant blue beetle, Wang steps forward and prepares to attack, stating that no matter how big the enemy seems, a bug is still just a bug. After defeating the creature with a single blow, his level increases. Satisfied, he says that hitting a 15x EXP multiplier upon entering combat was really lucky. But to beat period, he will need to reach level 15, when skills and attributes change drastically. Interrupting his thoughts, the blue-haired girl he saved approaches and asks how the boy managed to defeat the monster. Flirting with Wang, the young woman asks if he can be her bodyguard, but the boy refuses as he has better things to do. Suddenly, arrows start flying toward the two. Raising his sword in front of his body, the boy pushes the girl away while telling her to be careful. With great agility, he cuts most of the arrows in half, but some still hit him. Unconcerned, our boy can only think about which players are capable of attacking like that. They are level 15 archers who have just completed their class advancement. Our boy concludes that the arrows were definitely fired by a precision shooter. From the top of a building, the archer tells his colleague that someone dodged most of his arrows. Next to him, his friend says that must be Wang, so they better go finish him off before he takes all the EXP. Agreeing with the plan, the brown-haired boy decides to attack again to eliminate our boy and the girl next to him. Down below, the protagonist sees a sea of arrows coming his way again. Annoyed, he realizes it's the Tianxia guys, but he doesn't know why the group is attacking innocent people like that. Taking action, he tells the girl to run and save herself since the group's target isn't her. Suddenly, a shining fireball that looks like the sun appears in front of him, leaving him surprised. Then a large explosion happens, sending debris flying everywhere. Still on top of the building, the archer complains to his friend who is a mage, saying he blatantly stole his kill. But the young man with glasses intervenes and says that since no reward was obtained, the target must still be alive. Even annoyed by Xing Qijian's orders, the boys jump from the skyscraper determined to hunt down Wang and eliminate him. Staying behind, the nerdy boy complains that his friends are underestimating our boy. Next to him, his ally tells him to calm down. Laughing, the young man says he's super calm because he's already thought of strategy and will be the winner when it's all over. Elsewhere, the injured protagonist takes a potion to recover his HP. Promising that he will take down all of Tianxia when he advances in class, suddenly something catches his attention. That something is the Titan centipede that bursts from the ground, ready to destroy everything and everyone. Throwing the potion to the ground, Wang says it's time to show the group that they messed with the wrong person. A little nearby, we see a small explosion happening on top of a bridge, caused by the archer who has just killed another horde of weak grunts, receiving coins as a reward. Looking to the side, the boy sees our protagonist running towards something and concludes he must be fleeing from him, deciding to launch another arrow attack while mocking that the boy is just a small animal, and exactly the kind he enjoys annihilating. Y reaches the Titan centipede and the creature's body shields him from the arrows. Activating his power, he concludes that the archer's attack is indeed of an advanced class and caused damage to the monster. The brown-haired boy finally realizes the mistake he made because now the giant insect is angry and has its eyes on him. A little farther away, Xingqi reveals that he is satisfied with the monsters his group eliminated. The mage asks where the archer is, but the boy says it doesn't matter because the priority is to take down the protagonist. When they look ahead, they see the missing group member running from the giant centipede and begging for help. Surprised, the black-haired boy asks why his friend triggered the boss fight of the world alone. And the boy with glasses replies that it must be because he wants all the EXP for himself. Then he asks everyone to get ready to fight the boss of that area. After an intense battle, we see all the boys and the monster's HP bar is low. Exhausted, the members of Tianxia wonder what to do, and the supposed leader says the fight is almost over, so they can't give up now. Suddenly, Wang appears running and says that since everyone is tired, he came to help and moves in to steal the kill from everyone. The boys are left speechless and realize it's too late to stop the guy. Irritated, they watch our boy attacking the centipede and say it's outrageous that he stayed hidden all this time just to steal a kill. Furious, Xingqi tells his companions to finish off the guy, but one of the boys warns that he just reached level 15. which means his strength increased absurdly, preventing even a slight approach. Choosing his attributes, Wang reveals that he doesn't want the Lucky Warrior or the Celestial Mage, because what he likes most is the Destiny Master, since as a seer he prefers to try to seize the future with his own hands. Thus, by directing the flow of destiny, his luck is accumulated, and he only needs to consume it to unleash all kinds of incredible phenomena. Unaware of the danger, the boys attack him, asking what kind of trash class he chose. Laughing, our boy, now in new attire, decides to show what he's capable of, which makes the enemy group members wonder why their most accurate attacks failed. Explaining, the protagonist says that happened because of his strong luck bar skill, which makes attacks useless, besides allowing him to ignore blows that don't come with a karma bar until his luck runs out. He tells everyone to look up, and we can see that Wang is now capable of making flaming meteors fall from the sky, catching the boys completely off guard with such a class advancement. Laughing, our boy says that is the evil star of the sky, a meteor that brings calamities through the power of bad luck, having a 1% chance to deal 10 times more damage, which is really, really bad. After a massive explosion, we discover that all the players from the Tianxia Guild were severely injured. However, even all battered, Xingqi promises that he will get revenge. Approaching, Wang points his sword at the boy, saying that he heard what the young man said, and that it's time to settle the score between them for the sake of his friends. But a woman appears and steps in front, begging the protagonist not to kill her contractor, because he was forced to join Tianxia and had nothing against him truly. The protagonist doesn't care about the information, and the woman, desperate, says she will do whatever he wants if the boy's life is spared. Mouth agape, our boy reveals he wasn't expecting that kind of offer, and hugging the woman, he says she better not regret the decision because there will be no turning back. Furious, Xingqi asks how the young man dares to steal his NPC and says he is a very cruel guy. Holding the girl in his arms, Wang says beautiful women are for the strong and that it's the boy's fault for losing the fight so ridiculously. So even if the girls from the game come into the real world, it will still belong to specialists like him, period. Walking away, our boy ends the discussion stating that this time he'll let the boy off the hook, but it won't happen again. Elsewhere, he puts the blue-haired woman down and she says she actually won't sign any contract with him. In response, the boy asks her not to be nervous because he doesn't want that either. He just wanted to teach Xingqi a lesson, which doesn't seem to have worked because a little farther away, the boy says he will end his life and take his NPC back. Out of nowhere, someone appears and asks if the group is talking about Wang, warning that if they say where he is, she will kill everyone there painlessly. The archer prepares to attack and asks who the woman thinks she is to show up saying those things. Jumping in to land a big blow, the woman says it's a shame they don't realize the gap in levels between them, but that in any case, she's not interested in torturing them. Either way, once struck, the boys begin to scream, and we can see that only Xingqi remains alive. Approaching, the woman asks how he would like to be finished off. On his knees, the boy begs for his life and says he'll tell where the protagonist is, as he has no intention of being an enemy of the game. Smiling, the woman thinks to herself that she only left the boy alive to force him to talk, but she didn't expect it would actually work. Out loud, she says she will help him and hands him a fruit, then asks him to eat it. This causes the NPC with Wang to immediately sense that her contract with the boy has just been broken. Furious, she grabs our boy's clothes and asks why he killed her contractor if he said he would only teach him a lesson. Confused, the boy replies that if he'd wanted to eliminate the boy, he would have done it earlier and that it was probably a monster who did it. Sad, the woman asks how that's possible if Xingqi was with other players, and the young man says it could have been a boss. With tears in her eyes, the NPC asks if he could form a contract with her now that she's alone. Embarrassed, Wang says he'll have to talk to his wife before accepting her. Suddenly, the ground starts to tremble and crack, surprising the two, and a kind of giant demon cockroach appears, happy to have found a player. Hugging the boy, the terrified NPC asks what that thing is, but her almost ally says it's just a southern cockroach. Given its appearance, it must be the final boss of the dungeon. With sword in hand, our boy asks the girl to step back. But before he can attack, someone jumps in and slices the cockroach in two with a single strike. It's Xingqi, who now looks like the Hulk, but floral. Approaching, he asks the protagonist how it feels to have his kill stolen. Shocked, our boy asks who he is, what's up with the green color, and why he knows his name. Screaming, the monster, once a boy, reveals his identity and says everything is Wang's fault for daring to steal his NPC. Then explains that the human capacity for failure has a limit, unless one stops being human. Confused, the young man's former ally asks why he turned into a monster, and the protagonist questions what plan he has in mind. Responding, the floral Hulk-like creature says he got tired of being human. Watching from a distance, the one responsible for everything says she never imagined a human could turn into a monster after eating her fruit. Still puzzled, Wang asks how the boy became that horrible creature. And the monster, lunging to attack, says he can ask about that when he gets to hell. But our boy, of course, dodges the blow, which makes his opponent furious. Using tentacles that emerge from his arm, Xingqi says that in any case, he knows exactly the best way to defeat him. Grabbing his former NPC, he states that if the boy doesn't want her to go poof, he better stay still. Irritated, Wang shouts that the monster only has one trick, which is taking people hostage, but the creature says he doesn't care. Showing he's angry, the creature tightens his tentacles around the girl, who screams in pain. Our boy then says that kind of behavior is really foolish because his NPC is Jik Sufu and he doesn't need another one like the monster thinks. But that only makes Kexingshi even more furious, who says he wasn't so lucky, since his NPC chose him, and after the contract was made, he discovered that she had no combat abilities. The only good thing was the young woman's beauty, but even so, she rejected him when he tried a more romantic approach. Because he talked too much, the plant Hulk creature only realizes the protagonist moved when his tentacles are cut. Wang quickly managed to free the poor girl and even prevented her from falling by catching her in his arms, then gently placing her down, while telling the enemy that without the girl, the boy would be nothing, so he should be grateful instead of talking about her flaws. Tengchi then tells him to shut up because he was chosen by the strongest Valkyrie, so he has no idea of his pain. Opening his mouth, the creature launches an attack, but our boy manages to defend himself and says that the Valkyrie's choice is based on strength level. That's why it will be him who saves the world. Wounded by a sword strike, the monster warns that attacking is useless because his regeneration is very fast. Using his data awakening skill, the protagonist decides to look for weak points to end the fight. He finds one shortly after, a lump resembling a fruit in the opponent's stomach. Preparing to strike, Wang activates his luck burst, which increases the critical hit rate of the blow by 100%. He charges with everything, aiming at the lump that seems to be the monster's weak spot, landing a direct hit with his sword, which causes Xingqi's HP bar to nearly hit 0 as he tries to understand what just happened. Falling to the ground shortly after, the boy's items are automatically transferred to the protagonist's inventory, who feels like a thief. Approaching, the boy's former NPC prays for him and says goodbye, wishing he may rest in peace. Intrigued, our boy wonders who could have turned the young man into a monster, and the responsible party quickly appears. Introducing herself again, since the boy had already bumped into her, the woman says her name is Emerald, and her goal is to take Wang's life. Looking at the woman, the boy says he remembers her and asks if she and Ruby are the assassins from the game world. Confirming, Emerald says she heard the boy manage to see her companion's weak spot and asks if he can do it again, stating that even if the answer is yes, he still won't be able to stop her. Suddenly, plant tentacles rise from the ground and grab the protagonist. Trapped, he realizes he can't breathe and can't use his abilities like that. Approaching, the woman says that unlike the idiot Ruby, she doesn't like fighting up close. We see the red-haired Valkyrie in her room who felt that someone was talking about her while recovering from a punishment she received. Grabbing one of the tentacles, the enemy woman says she'll make the boy suffer. As he starts to take hits, he screams in pain. His opponent then asks what it feels like to be whipped in the real world, throwing Wang far away right after. Xingqi's former NPC approaches, worried, while Emerald says she's tired of torturing him and will now finish things as Bayo wishes. Standing and wounded, our boy says he's fine, just feels like his whole body is burning. Opening his inventory, he looks for what he can use since his luck bar is still charging and the situation is urgent. Suddenly, Wang realizes that the key Rumaman picked up might be usable as a weapon and wonders what would happen if he used it. To find out, he decides to take the risk, thankful that luck is on his side. His enemy, ready to attack, promises to turn him into ashes, and declares that the game ends right there in that moment. A large glowing green ball advances toward the pair. Holding the key, the boy discovers the item has detected his class advancement and now allows him to use its base powers. Transforming immediately into the artifact called Keyblade Chanhan Godslays, a massive sword of fire. Placing his new weapon in front of his body, our boy declares he will reflect the attack back at his opponent. By doing so, he activates the sword's holy protection and reflective mirror, completely blocking the spell that was cast at him. Surprised, Emerald wonders if that's the power of the key Lord Baya mentioned earlier, realizing the hard way that her own attack was turned against her. A massive explosion happens, lifting a huge cloud of dust. Behind Juan, the NPC asks if the woman was defeated, and he replies that usually when someone asks that question, it means the fight isn't over yet. Emerald appears in the middle of the dust, coughing. Badly injured, she says the boy made a fool of her. But before annihilating him, she needs to tell her lord that the boy managed to use the key's power. She then casts a spell directed at the ground, which causes a great windstorm followed by a lightning storm. Turning around, the good duo realizes the enemy has vanished. Surprised, Wang wonders why the woman just fled like that. Then he thinks about how the stats of his new weapon are truly insane, even better than S-rank items. His new sword can do nothing less than reflect a long-range ballistic attack every 30 seconds. Our boy smiles while his new companion still can't believe how strong he is, revealing that she used to think he just knew a few tricks. Out loud, the young woman decides to call the boy, saying that she hopes she can help him in his adventure, if he's merciful and agrees to make a pact with her. Placing his hand on the NPC's head, the boy asks if she's sure she wants that, and she says yes. Satisfied with the answer, Wang says that in that case, he agrees to make the pact and welcome her. The process begins and a message appears asking if the boy accepts to form a contract with the girl. Quickly, our boy says aloud that he does. The young woman then says that from now on she'll be his partner, but that she's useless and can only help in a minimal way. Smiling, the boy says it's no problem because even small bonuses are useful. Checking the NPC's attributes, he discovers that her only ability is to increase potion recovery effects by 10%. Apologizing, the young woman says she's very weak. But our boy says that actually her ability will be very helpful, then asking Canfeng to follow him so they can deal with the anomaly once and for all. In front of them is a kind of portal and the boy asks how they can deactivate it. His NPC says she doesn't know and Wang wonders if a key might work. He then inserts his new artifact into what seems to be a keyhole. The idea seems to work and the boy starts feeling the sword being pulled in, which surprises him. Worried, his new NPC asks him to be careful. Suddenly, a dreadful monster emerges from the ground and prepares to attack our boy with its enormous teeth. Luckily, blue blades appear out of nowhere and take down the creature. It's Jik Sufu, who says she's there to save him, explaining that thanks to her contractor's class advancement, her power has been completely restored. Happy, our boy celebrates the arrival of his wife. But the young woman quickly changes her expression and asks if he can explain what exactly he made a contract with another woman, specifically the one at his side. Furious, she asks if she should feel betrayed since the boy found a new partner just hours after they separated. Then realizing that the NPC was also the partner of another player. Desperate, Wang approaches and says he can explain, but that it's a long story. Stopping him from getting closer, Jek Sufu asks if the woman wasn't Xingqi's partner. The boy replies that the guy was disgusting, but his ally says that's no excuse for stealing his NPC. Trying to explain, our boy says it was Qianfeng's contractor who broke the contract, and only after that did the NPC agree to sign a new contract voluntarily. By his side, the young woman confirms the story. Relieved, his powerful NPC says that in that case, she's happy to know he's not a bad person, revealing that she always believed in him since the day they signed the contract. Changing the subject, Wang asks how Rumaman is, and the woman says that she and her partner are fine, just out hunting monsters. We're transported to where the two girls are fighting a creature. The girl with glasses casts her chain lightning attack and her NPC throws a fireball, making the creature burn and get electrocuted. The combined attacks work and the monster simply explodes. Excited, Rumaman says she'll finally be able to advance in class, she just needs to ask Wang which path to choose. Axiobe approaches and says she already told her that the most suitable class for her is Elemental Apprentice. Explaining, the young woman says she doesn't doubt she's right, but since she's the boy's partner, she'd prefer to ask him too. Back where our boy is, we see him opening a seal, concerned that there are still monsters in that area. His weapon then informs him that the coordinates of the insect island have been recorded, so in the future, a portal can be opened for a limited time. Wang then realizes he'll be able to return to that place whenever he wants, which is very, very good. Suddenly, Xiaobei and Rumaman appear and ask if he really managed to solve the crisis. The girl with glasses doesn't even wait for an answer and immediately asks which class he thinks she should choose. Smiling, the boy says it's easy because he knows everything about the game's classes. Analyzing, he says that Elemental Apprentice might be a good option, but she could end up accidentally hurting other members of her own group, while Summoner and Mage take a long time to become powerful. Kaleidoscope Maiden seems to be the best choice. Without thinking twice, the young girl says that in that case, she will choose this class. Wang suddenly changes his mind and tells her to wait because of the clothes required at that specific level. But Xiaobei says it's already too late, because the girl had already accepted and started the transformation. A new outfit begins to be sewn onto Manman's body, who says that the magic of love, courage, and justice are now part of her being. The process ends, and the young girl now wears witch-like attire and has red hair, being officially considered a Kaleidoscope Maiden. When she turns around, she sees her friends watching her with slightly irritated expressions. Embarrassed, the girl asks what the hell is that class and why she said a bunch of nonsense against her will. Explaining, Wang says that now she can use all magic attributes and deal incredible damage, but to do so she must always transform. Nervously, the young girl says she can't wear that kind of outfit and asks to change classes, but her friend says it's not possible. We're taken to another place where there's a castle on top of a mountain. Inside, someone complains, saying they were very careless. It's Emerald, who is telling Ruby that Wang unlocked the hidden power of the key. Her partner asks why the sour face and if it's because the boy taught her a lesson. She replies that unfortunately she was defeated by the protagonist, who had a divine weapon and had changed classes. But at least she wasn't defeated by him when he was level 10, and she'd have to beg for mercy. Ruby asks if she's looking to get beaten up, but quickly shuts up when the woman attacks her with green tentacles and traps her. However, the true version of her partner appears behind her and asks who the idiot is now, since even Wang can see through that trick and she can't. The two begin to fight, but another Valkyrie appears and asks how they dare disturb Lord Bei's slumber. Quickly, the two women kneel and beg for forgiveness, pleading for another chance. Emerald thinks to herself that Aster is acting like she has some power even though she's just an assistant. Baya then asks if it's true that Wang learned to use the key, revealing that it doesn't really surprise him. But since the young man decided to get in his way, he will send a gift, a prelude of what's to come. In the real world, the protagonist and his group notice that the world looks different, darker than usual. Reading the news, they realize that the monster outbreak is widespread, and Manman is relieved that at least her city has the boy nearby. Smiling, her boy praises himself, saying he really is the strongest player in the world. But suddenly, the sky goes dark, and what looks like a massive portal begins to open, catching everyone by surprise. Screaming, Siobe Lugia says that it's a legendary spell called Genesis Requiem, and someone says they need to get out of there. Trembling, the pink-eyed girl says there's no way to escape. Curious, her friend asks why she's so scared, and the girl says that spell allows no defense. So even if everyone runs, nothing can be avoided. The laws of karma will be distorted, and the city will turn to dust. Wang asks who is responsible, and the girl says only demon god-class mages who have reached the peak of magic can do that. So it can only be the final boss of the Black Sanctuary dungeon, Baya. On his throne, the mage with a terrifying expression smiles and says he hopes Wang accepts his gift with grace. A massive purple and pink lightning bolt falls from the sky and hits the city buildings, causing an explosion that could be heard for miles by all the residents. Debris starts flying everywhere, causing people to panic and wonder what's going on. A guy starts filming a video but gets hit and begins to scream in pain. Multiple explosions occur in sequence. In traffic, desperate drivers try to escape death, but they also end up being hit directly. We can see a huge mass of floating energy over the city. Very upbeat, Xiaobei says that even if someone reaches level 99 and advances to the final class, they still won't be able to block the spell. But Wang steps forward and says he'll just deflect the magic and send it back to the one responsible. He heads toward the sky with his artifact in hand, releasing yellow lights. Then, once well positioned, he begins his plan and tries to deflect the massive powerful energy. However, his weapon warns that there's a system error and he risks losing his data if a sudden power drop is detected. Nervous, the boy asks the sword to hold on a little longer because he is the strongest player in the game, and he has friends who need his protection, even if he has to risk his life. Suddenly, extra hands appear around his sword. They belong to Jik Sufu, who says that this is the Wang she knows. She then asks how he dares to fight alone if he always said she was his wife. Smiling from ear to ear, our boy says that in that case, they should work together as a couple and send the spell back. Next, all we can see is someone letting out a huge scream. Yellow lights appear in a purple sky, revealing the place where Lord Gaia lives. Looking back, Wang is shocked to see something, and asks Jik Sufu if she's okay. But suddenly he realizes he's in an unfamiliar place, and to make matters worse, without his wife. A voice emerges and calls him Survivor 13, asking if he has finally woken up. Then warns that this is a refuge created by the master of Player Long, and that the boy has been in a coma for 7 days. Confused, the young man questions the survivors and the city upon realizing he was in a coma for 7 days. The chosen girl says that city was hit by an energy explosion from an unknown source, and the survival rate was below 0.1%. At that moment, the boy realizes that he wasn't able to protect anyone, even while claiming to be the strongest player. Wrapping him in a hug, the robot woman declares that since he is the last human, he should create the next generation with her. But he wasn't understanding her words. Suddenly, she throws him onto the bed, claiming she's comfortable with any position. However, the protagonist believed it was just a joke. Master Long installed a function when he built her. She wouldn't tell a joke if she detected any sign of depression. Even so, the protagonist realizes that the robot's master had a strange sense of humor. Now he would follow the robot to find his partner. The puppet brought Wang Yangsu to this shelter due to her master's order to actively search for nearby refugees. However, she was not authorized to know his current location. Suddenly, the protagonist starts waving at his friends. They all get very excited upon seeing Wang Yangsu's arrival. Shortly after, two girls begin exchanging fierce glances. Everyone was very worried about his health since he had been gone for so long. Upon hearing that, he begins lightly teasing the girl who doesn't admit all her anxiety in seeing him again. Confused, he asked about the survivors who didn't seem to be at that location. However, the others didn't trust the shelter and left quickly. The protagonist reflects on that small base with insufficient security. An alert is issued, showing that there was a monster invasion. The sounds start becoming more and more present. More and more, the monsters were approaching the kids who ran in desperation. The creatures were delighted to note the presence of humans and wanted to capture them. Suddenly, the robot woman begins to materialize a weapon in her hands, following her master's orders. She was already ready to begin the extermination when the hero asked to handle the situation. After being in a coma for a week, this seemed like a good opportunity to exercise, and he felt much stronger. A terrible and frightening wolf tries to grab the human with its sharp claws. However, it is stopped when a rock hits its head. The group is already prepared to defend everyone with their abilities. One of the girls casts a basic water bomb spell on the enemy, and he is thrown far away. Now that the target was located, they could begin the elimination. With a sharp sword, one of the monsters has its body sliced in two in less than 5 seconds by the robot's hands. Upon realizing the strength of his new companion, the protagonist thinks there won't be enough time to test new abilities. From behind the trees, a gigantic figure watches the entire situation and begins to approach. The creature says it let its younger brothers enjoy the thrill of hunting humans but didn't expect them to be killed. However, this new enemy didn't consider himself like the other grunts. Being a level 30 warrior monkey Laz, he would kill all his opponents. Upon detecting the extremely high threat level of the individual, the robot informs that the recommended action is to evacuate immediately. However, Wang Yangsu was eager for that kind of fight. Realizing a battle was ahead, the giant monkey began to approach. But the protagonist was already in a defensive stance, ready for any attack. Suddenly, the two began exchanging some punches, and shortly after, a big explosion happened between them. Wang Yangsu realized that his health level had been affected. With bloodied hands, that level 30 looked like an elite monster. Smiling, the monkey claimed to be able to defeat everyone with a single blow. However, he hadn't noticed that his fists were burning and had completely disappeared. The protagonist had a deeper understanding of the composition of the game world. Focused, he launched a new trick called data corruption against his opponent. Rage filled the monkey's face as he declared that the fight wasn't over yet. His tribe had several powerful warriors who would surely take care of the young man. But Wang Yangsu didn't seem worried at all about that kind of threat, as he knew he would defeat them all. Behind a wooden wall, desperate screams spread through the area. A horned girl was enjoying the whole situation. Powerless, the man on the bed begged her to let him go. He claimed he had relatives and children under his care. Upon hearing that, the woman started to think it over. Shortly after, she slit his throat, realizing he couldn't satisfy her. While changing clothes, she reflected on how human creatures were not useful. Outside, she spoke with one of her subordinates about the lack of news from the monkey Laz. Sitting on her throne, the Beast Queen Fang Lin, level 30, pondered her next steps. Apparently, those players could last longer than a normal person. After the scare, everyone celebrated the victory and thanked the protagonist immensely. They were heading toward the official concentration camp when they heard that there was a military presence. Analyzing the situation, the two discussed how the wild region was full of monsters. Meanwhile, the robot turned her back, stating that her mission was complete. Wang Yangsu grabbed her by the arm, saying he could help escort the citizens. However, she replied that she was programmed to follow Master Long's instructions unless she was purchased. Upon hearing the price of 100,000 coins, the hero considered it a great value for a magical puppet. Around a fig tree, the man recounted how at first they were evacuated from the city by the army. However, halfway through the journey, they encountered a very powerful monster immune to bullets. During that week, the situation seemed to have worsened everywhere, with monsters and Baya capable of destroying an entire city. At his side, the girl watched the hero, who seemed upset for not finding a way to protect the city. Before she could offer some comfort, the robot squeezed him tightly after detecting a mood shift. The puppet hugged him while starting to execute calming instructions. With her sword raised, the girl questioned what kind of command that was. But he looked very frightened, stating that none of those orders came from him. In the end, everyone went to rest that night to start the journey early. Wang Yangsu stayed awake and walked through the dark forest. His only goal was to find a decent place to relieve himself. But he was soon interrupted by the presence of the puppet following him deep into the forest. Realizing her presence, he asked why she wasn't asleep. The robot explained that she didn't need to eat, sleep, or drink water. She only needed to be recharged with electricity or mana. With an unusual request, the master asked if the puppet could smile sometimes, since she looked scary. Being equipped with emotionless bionic muscles, she was unable to smile as it was something tied to human activity. Furthermore, now that she had become his partner, she should have a name. From now on, the robot would be called Alice. However, she didn't know the meaning of the word partner, which would be a story for another day. Sitting down, Alice reflected on the term used by humans to refer to a person with similar ideas and who is trustworthy. She couldn't understand why, as she considered herself just an object. Suddenly, her body was pierced while a woman stated she didn't expect to find anyone awake. Alice fell to the ground and Lady Lean emerged victorious, believing it was impossible to survive that attack. The Beast Queen Fang hoped her next prey wouldn't be as easily defeated as that one, but the robot began to reconstruct herself from the wound and grabbed the enemy's leg. However, her combat capacity had been reduced to 60%. Even so, according to her diagnostics, she should continue the mission and fight bravely. Leon turned and carefully observed the girl, who by her calculations should be dead after the blow. Alice introduced herself and explained that she was a level 25 mechanized demon doll. The blue sky is filled with clouds swirling over the forest landscape. After relieving himself, Wang Yangsu appears to be feeling much better. Shortly after it, he feels a strange chill on his back. Before he could put on his pants, he had already been attacked by a weird monster. Realizing their presence was noticed, the order became to kill the human and report to the boss. Curious, the protagonist asks who they were talking about. However, he doesn't seem worried at all because he trusts and patrols Alice. On the other side, the robot was losing parts of her body, including one of her arms. Even so, she seemed determined to fight any kind of threat. Irritated, Lady Lean continued attacking Alice, claiming to be much more powerful. With her system failing, Alice calculates that the chance of winning that battle was less than 0.1%. However, she still had one last resource and was willing to use all her strength. The demon doll starts running toward the queen, who becomes very confused. She grabs the enemy's body and wraps her in a powerful hug as a strong energy radiates from her body. With the black box system unlocked, she initiates the self-destruction sequence. Suddenly, a huge explosion occurs, launching debris in all directions. The doll's body is completely destroyed, leaving only her head. But her target remained imposing and with all her parts intact. Alice can't believe her attack didn't cause a single injury to her opponent. Meanwhile, the protagonist runs, still in disbelief at the audacity of those orcs. His expression changes as he hears a loud noise, an explosion. Suspicious, he starts walking more slowly, trembling at what might be ahead. Suddenly, he is shocked to see what had happened to Alice. Beneath the queen's feet, the robot apologizes for not being able to complete the mission, losing operational capacity. With a smile on her face, she states that her master would be fully refunded to buy a more suitable doll. At that moment, Lin grows impatient with all the talking and crushes Alice's head. Wang Yangshu is in disbelief at the scene and how he lost his new companion so easily. Noticing his expression, the beast queen Fang begins mocking the human, who becomes increasingly irritated and ready for a new battle. Determined, the protagonist was willing to spin the wheel to decide Lin's death. After a few spins, the roulette lands on Best Slayer Style A, where damage and defense are increased by 50% and attacking weak points causes extra damage. With a threatening look, the hero was ready for the hunt. From afar, he prepares for the battle ahead and starts running. Lin seems very pleased to see that her enemy didn't flee instantly. That small body would be no match for the powerful beast queen Fang. With clenched fists, the protagonist approaches with a punch. Suddenly, Lin feels pain in her stomach, something unexpected. Even so, she seems satisfied with the situation and with the fight ahead. Using Wang Yangshu's style, he brings one of his hands forward and hits the opponent's face. Even then, he states that he hasn't finished his attacks and is determined to fight. The Beast Queen Fang can't defend against any of those powerful attacks and continues to take blows. With a leap, the protagonist seems to fly while launching punch after punch like a rainstorm upon Lin. Unable to defend herself, she merely receives the blow, appearing weaker and less imposing. Suddenly, a small explosion sends energy across the area, increasing the tension. Confused, the queen can't believe that a low-level player could defeat her. The protagonist says it wasn't his intention to kill a woman as beautiful as her, but he wanted revenge for Alice. Upon hearing those words, Lin grows increasingly irritated as she considered herself much more than just a pretty woman. Quickly, she knocks the weapon from her opponent's hands and tries to get closer. Showing all of her strength, she carries his body on her back. Lin hated being underestimated and was much more than a pretty face. She was an orc warrior. At that moment, the hero tries to recover while thinking he might be facing a legendary monster. Shortly after, his thoughts are interrupted as the fighter crushes his neck with her legs. A new explosion occurs, surprising with its sudden strength and destruction. Wang Yangshu starts losing strength as he realizes he can't breathe properly. Pleased, Lin squeezes his neck harder and harder between her legs. At that moment, she seemed determined to crush him until his body was completely drained. With her beautiful face, she believed that a pervert like him should be getting excited by those words. But the hero wasn't shaken and bit the warrior with his teeth. Feeling the pain spreading through her body, she had no choice but to release him from the trap. As he stood up, he managed to break free and prepare for the next round. Lady Lin seemed unable to understand how a low-level player dared to challenge her. On top of everything, he had managed to bite her tail without fearing the consequences. Despite being aroused, Wang Yangshu stated that his only goal was to kill that opponent. Man or woman, in his eyes, she was just an enemy that needed to be eliminated. Now the warrior began to enjoy the conversation more and seemed to recognize the young man by his name. While running to attack, she declared he was a prey worthy of being remembered. Getting closer and closer, the hero didn't hold back and said the same about Lin. At that moment, the two forces collided. Punches and strikes came from all directions, hitting each other's faces. A new explosion burst forth in fury, throwing rocks and fire into the sky. With a maniacal laugh, Lin appeared imposing and Wang Yangshu was lying in the center of the crater. The demonic warrior mocked the enemy, displaying absolute confidence and power. Realizing the damage caused by the self-destruction attack, she fell to her knees, lamenting defeat. Until the last second, Queen Lin was extremely proud. Player Wang Yangshu killed the legendary beast, earning the title Beyond the Legend and gaining a 1% boost to all attributes. Night falls and the warrior manages to return to camp. Even staggering and wounded, he seems more concerned about checking if everyone is safe. Before he could mention a legendary monster, he faints and is caught by the girl. Desperate, she seems unable to understand what happened to the contractor. Cradling his face, he begins to cry as he tells her that Alice died during the battle to protect them all. The woman tries to comfort the hero in every way, feeling his rage and sadness. Confused, the girl beside her seems not to feel any of those emotions, but the contract time between them varied since that one had a higher level. For now, it wouldn't be possible to repair Alice. The protagonist was gathering her pieces. During the explosion, the magical puppet lost most of her body. Now the best course of action was to escort the citizens to the shelter. As they walked, they noticed the abundance of people ahead. Noticing they had arrived at the shelter, they could finally rest a little. However, they were confused by the large number of people gathered outside. Apparently, it was said that identities needed to be carefully verified before being allowed entry. Still, those people had been waiting a long time and were becoming increasingly irritated. Suddenly, an imposing figure opened the door, wanting to know who was making so much noise. In addition, he threatened everyone, children or elders, that they would be executed if they didn't obey his orders. The henchmen pointed weapons at a defenseless girl holding her stuffed animal. But the protagonist interrupted the argument, saying it was ridiculous to point a dangerous weapon at a child. Noticing his elegant clothes, Siakayan seemed quite interested in him. Approaching with light steps, she told the hero that players could enter the city immediately. Confused, he didn't understand the special treatment, but the woman realized she was speaking to someone likely ignorant of the rules. Suddenly, screams echoed through the entire area, announcing the arrival of a great monster. The two watched closely what was about to happen. The level 50 dragon Hail Keezer was an elite monster from the land of dreams and terrified everyone with its flames. Wang Yangshu asked for civilians to be evacuated as quickly as possible so he could take care of the situation. However, Siakayan knew the boy had a low level and should know his place. On the other side, the giant monster Jupiter 1 made its appearance. It was the ultimate weapon created through the combined efforts of many players, capable of defeating monsters immune to bullets. The giant identified its target as a dragon with a medium threat level. Wang Yangsu appeared terrified by the scene he was witnessing. Siakayan explained that this was something only players could do. Asuka, the pilot of Jupiter 1, was ready to show all her skills. With just one blow, she was determined to finish off that horrible monster. After pressing a button, the giant began to move, but she realized it wasn't the best strategy. To retaliate, the dragon launched a fireball toward its enemy. Embarrassed, the woman remarked that the pilot had no experience in real combat. Wasting no time, the powerful flame approached Jupiter 1. Upon impact, the giant began to lose some balance. After the hit, the damage reached 20%, causing Asuka to worry about her official debut. Siakayan began to realize that Jupiter 1 alone wouldn't be enough. It would take more players to help. While stating that the hero should hide somewhere safe, she realizes the young man had already disappeared. The cabin door begins to be forced open little by little. Wang Yangsu appears to offer help while Asuka tries to understand who that stranger was. Without giving importance to anything else, he simply asks the pilot to listen to his advice if she wants to come out victorious. The young man was sure the next attack would be a powerful headbutt, and without wasting time, the level 50 dragon approached the giant in exactly that manner. Asuka is impressed by the attack and loses her balance, falling on top of the protagonist's face. From that moment on, she was determined to listen to all his commands carefully. Thus, the two would fight together to defeat the beast. The dragon usually spits a fireball after finishing its melee attacks, so they should interrupt it while it's charging its fireball. Listening to his tips, the pilot manages to hit the enemy's head with one of the giant's hands. While the opponent is stunned, they should use the Spiral Photon Destroyer. Shortly after, Jupiter 1 starts spinning like a whirlwind. Quickly, Hail Keezer is sucked into that gigantic spiral. With great joy, Asuka celebrates their victory, assuming the fight was over. But being experienced, Wang Yangsu knew they should wait for the system confirmation of the dragon's death. Shortly after, it returns flying through the sky with its large wings. Suddenly, the level 50 dragon was in a frenzied state as it prepared its next attack. Asuka wasn't sure if Jupiter 1 could withstand the ultimate move, Hellfire Torment. However, the hero was already heading out the door, knowing he needed to act quickly. Wang Yangsu positions himself on Jupiter 1's head, with energy surging through his body. The fireball comes straight at him at high speed, but he grips his sword firmly and uses the skill Tainhan God's Lair to reflect the spell. The flame hits the shield and bounces back in the same direction. The move known as Hellfire Torment hits the dragon head-on. Player Wang Yangsu was able to land a deep blow on Hail Keezer, earning a crystal and a dragon egg. Meanwhile, Siakayan realizes someone else managed to defeat the monster before the other players arrived. Irritated, they were not all happy to have that kill stolen by another player. Descending from the giant Jupiter 1, the protagonist introduces himself and asks what the men wanted. Pointing a weapon, one of them threatens the hero, demanding he hand over all his gear and materials. Confused, he can't believe those players had the audacity to try to rob him. However, they claim they didn't steal anyone's kill. They just fought bravely to protect everyone. Noticing the beautiful girl by his side, one of them falls in love and decides to drop the matter if she would come with them. Suddenly, the protagonist breaks the weapon into pieces, demanding they not point a weapon of war at his wife. In that game, all equipment could be destroyed. The higher its level, the more durable a weapon became. Determined, Wang Yangsu hugs his wife to protect her, stating he'd aim for the skull next time. Seeing the low-level player acting tough, the men were ready to start a fight. However, Jupiter 1 interrupts the potential brawl that was about to happen. From inside the giant, Asuka declares she wants to crush everyone who makes any kind of noise. Siakayan asks everyone to calm down, not to create more enemies. With determination, the woman says losses would soon be reimbursed by the guild. Turning their backs, the men leave, saying they would remember the protagonist's name. Turning to the hero, the woman welcomes Wang Yangsu and asks him to visit the city built by the Royal Union. Not knowing whether they could fully trust those people, they decided to look around. As they walked, the hero was amazed to see the tents scattered everywhere. But that was just the outer area inhabited by common people who hadn't been selected, as players didn't live there. After walking a bit more, the gates opened and they entered the city that never sleeps. Lights reflected from every direction as people walked through the corridor. Farther ahead, a vendor offered items such as cucumber potion, dragon slayer gear, and sexy lingerie for NPCs. Kaxia Kayan explained that there were over 1,000 players in that city and he could spend as much as he wanted. Looking at a window full of clothes, he seemed enchanted and asked his wife to try some on. However, she appeared irritated by that kind of comment, saying she'd never wear such lingerie. But Wang Yangshu's intention was to disguise that the girl was the strongest Valkyrie to avoid trouble. After accepting the proposal, the hero had to choose an outfit his wife could wear in public. Suddenly, he notices a voice calling him. Silence. Nothing. Embarrassed, the girl had changed clothes and was waiting for her contractor's opinion. In love, he begins to approach her but is quickly pushed back. Suddenly, the two lose balance and start falling together. The situation becomes awkward, with their faces very close to one another. Lying on the ground, they exchange glances without saying a word. But the girl asks the contractor to get up quickly while looking around. Embarrassed, he begins to stand up, hoping his wife doesn't hate him. The two walk hand in hand while the protagonist calls for Mammon and Xiaobei. Almost instantly, the two notice that Jie Xufu's outfit was chosen by the master. Changing the subject, he asks if the girls bought anything. Xiaobei says they found many skill trees for spells but didn't have enough coins to make any purchases. Suddenly, another girl runs toward her master. With sparkling eyes, she asks for a portable barbecue set to make dishes that would boost the master's attributes. Laughing sincerely, he realizes that she also wanted to shop. Wang Yangsu realized he was very poor at that moment and they needed to sell some materials to raise more money. While he reflects with his own thoughts, Xia Kayan approaches him. She says she understands the feeling of really wanting things and not having enough money to buy them. The best way to make money in the city was to trade with the Royal Union, exchanging items collected after defeating monsters. Holding his arm, the woman asks that they go into a more private place before starting the negotiation. That room was enchanted with soundproofing through mana, perfect for discussing important business. With the dragon crystal in his hands, the protagonist appears willing to hand it over, thinking it a valuable item. Crossing her legs, Xia Kayan says dragon crystals are good and the Royal Union can use them fully. Smiling, she offers the in-game price of 5 million, plus turning him into a VIP client who would receive discounts in the future. However, the hero is not satisfied since he knew the item was worth at least 50 million. The two remain silent as they evaluate each other. Their conflicts clash in that room. Kaxia Kayan realizes she's dealing with a greedy person and says she might withdraw from the deal. However, the young man knows exactly how much his items are worth. Trying to provoke him, she takes off her jacket while offering 10 million for the crystal. Even stuttering and blushing deeply, the hero still demands an amount of 45 million. But the woman was willing to lower the price further, deciding to take off her shoes. With determination, she makes her final offer of 15 million and not a cent more. Wang Yangsu seems determined to get more, saying he wanted 43 million. Shortly after, the woman is left wearing only her underwear. Realizing the tough negotiation, she decides to accept paying 40 million for the dragon crystal. Even so, she wasn't at a loss since the union receives a portion of each transaction as a processing fee. Speechless, the warrior simply observes the entire situation. Wang Yangshu still had other things to sell, like the gold tooth, high heels, and the woman seemed interested. A black envelope is handed to the protagonist. From that moment on, he could consider himself a rich man. Finally, he is invited to participate in an auction with products and equipment like NPC slaves. Shocked, the protagonist doesn't consider himself pathetic enough to take part in that. However, Xia Kayan tries to convince him to attend the auction, which would even feature giant robots like Jupiter 1. Upon hearing those words, Wang Yangsu becomes eager to get one of those androids. At the auction house, everything seemed very quiet. Meanwhile, the protagonist and his wife waited for the auction to begin. The host starts the auction presented by the Royal Union. The first item to be auctioned would be level 15 elf slaves. With one hand, she begins to pull the curtain that covered the mysterious box. Chained by their hands and necks, the Dark Forest elves would start being auctioned at the price of 300,000. At that very moment, the men in the audience fall in love and start bidding higher and higher. The two elves seem extremely irritated by the situation, begging to be killed immediately. The numbers were already reaching 3 million and kept rising rapidly. Wang Yangsu realizes that everyone around him was a complete pervert. Curious, his wife asks if the contractor supports slave trafficking, and he responds negatively. In the end, the host announces that the elven slaves were sold to a VIP client for 3 million. Blazing flames begin to swirl around the stage, announcing the next item in the auction. Seated in the audience, players notice a wave of burning heat spreading in all directions. The rank of weapon, the Purgatory Sword, attacks with a burn effect, causing continuous fire damage with each strike. Jigsufu asks what the contractor thought of that new item. After thinking for a moment, he considers the weapon complete trash. His Tianhong Godslayer was capable of blowing up S-class weapons, and he knew the fire effect was just decoration. His wife realizes that he had used his powers to see more than ordinary people. Throughout the auction, several other items were sold for exorbitant prices. The presenter was saving the best for last. The skill book bundle contained spells of all types, and bids would start at 100,000. Even after that announcement, many players were uninterested in buying useless books. But with a smile on her face, the girl simply waited for the bidding to begin. Suddenly, a bid of 300,000 comes from a distant seat. Wang Yangshu doesn't hesitate to buy the collection of books. The protagonist had his own plans regarding that item that nobody was interested in. In that game, you consumed EXP while studying skill books, and if you used too much, your level would decrease. But now that the game had merged with reality, reading too many books meant almost instant death. Jigsufu seemed confused, but the protagonist explained he wasn't like other players. The coordinates of Insect Island had already been recorded in his Tianhong God's Lair, where he could replenish his EXP. In the end, his wife was shocked to realize how intelligent her contractor was. Finally, the presenter announces the crown jewel of today's auction. The pervert seated in the audience imagined the final item would be the presenter herself, who was disgusted by the thought. In fact, it was the stone that grants access to the Forgotten Paradise dungeon. Everyone in the audience is shocked by the announcement. Wang Yangshu seems to reflect on the Forgotten Paradise, but he didn't expect more players to be eyeing that stone. Forgotten Paradise is a limited-time dungeon in the game with fairies, rare gear, and powerful NPCs. The starting bid was 500,000, but shortly after, bids were already reaching the millions. A blonde-haired young man seems determined to acquire the stone and offers 20 million, leaving everyone stunned. At that moment, his bid was the highest, and the presenter was about to close the bidding. With a smile on his face, the boy already felt the item was entirely his. However, his dreams were crushed when a bid of 30 million was announced. Not understanding what happened, the auctioneer searches for the potential buyer. From above, Wang Yangshu steps forward, willing to acquire the item for an exorbitant amount of money. With determination, the hero was set on visiting the Forgotten Paradise. Everyone is left extremely stunned by the value offered. Suddenly, the blonde-haired young man gets irritated and bids 35 million. The presenter grows increasingly shocked as she realizes the VIP clients were not joking. Wang Yangshu places a new bid, offering 45 million. Hearing that, the vice president of the Royal Union realizes he cannot compete. In the end, the presenter announces that the auction is concluded for today. Shortly after, the teleportation stone to the Forgotten Paradise is already in the hero's inventory. His wife is shocked to see how he managed to spend so much money in just a few hours. Meanwhile, the president of the Royal Union enters a room filled with elven slaves. With a whip in his hands, he appears extremely angry about losing the precious item at the auction. He reflects on the low-level young man who won the stone while venting his rage on his slaves. In the end, he is determined to find that boy and steal the item by force. Touching the girl's shoulders, he smiles malevolently, thinking about his next steps. Upon reuniting with the rest of the group, the warrior says they could go together to the unknown paradise. Xiaobei knew the place was guarded by the witch Morgan and the mage Merlin, posing a danger even to great sorcerers. However, Wang Yangshu tries to reassure the girl, saying he had been to that place many times in the past. He also remembers the books and hands them to Mammon to enable her in combat as a kaleidoscope maiden. But the girl wasn't interested in fighting dressed like that, wanting to choose a more normal class. The protagonist informs her that advanced classes were things like Evil Photo Girl or Tentacle Empress. Irritated, Mammon complains about the master making her choose such a horrible class and storms off. But he was just joking, since he knew it would be possible to switch to more normal classes. While walking, Mammon reflects on how much she hates that entire city and the fact that the players don't care at all about the end of the world. Suddenly, she comes across her fellow NPC suffering abuse from a bearded man. Immediately, Mammon steps into the situation to defend against that kind of injustice. The invincible and solitary level 33 Emperor believed that being a noble player gave him the right to do anything to an NPC. However, Mammon provokes him by saying he seemed like a nobody before becoming a player. At that moment, he realizes the girl is looking for a fight and accepts the challenge. Even so, she doesn't seem convinced to accept a fight that seems really boring. Turning their backs, the two of them completely ignore him while listening to insults and trying to leave the place. Although they say the city prevents players from hurting one another, from the moment you left the city, that rule no longer applied. Mammon realizes that the level 33 player was threatening her in public. With a smile on his face, he claimed that in that place there was no law anymore and the final word came from the strongest fist. Fearlessly, the girl accepts the challenge to try to correct that man's twisted mindset. Her companion asks if it wouldn't be better to call the master, but Mammon dismisses the possibility. Inside the arena, the two are placed under a shield to limit the space. The man taunts his opponent, stating that the shame of defeat would be witnessed by the public. The two would fight as equals without any help from partners. Meanwhile, the crowd discusses the fight that was starting, and the girl's beauty was something remarkable. The Emperor decides to let his opponent make the first move however she wanted. Bringing her hands together, she begins to craft a spell to strike her enemy. The energy begins to dissipate across the arena, seeming to lack control over fire, lightning, and wind blade. That spell was so basic it didn't even come close to the man. Now the level 33 player was ready to show off all his abilities. He begins to run toward the girl with his body wrapped in cosmic energy. With a smile on his face, he shows that Manman's spell didn't even tickle. Using the Fist of the Mighty Man of Asia attack, he throws the girl's body far away. The impact is so strong that a bit of blood comes out of her mouth. Upon seeing the girl fall to the ground, he seems pleased to hear her screams. Even though her level was low, she was still using basic spells. Manman reflects on the fact that Master Wang Yangsu is capable of defeating opponents of much higher levels than his own. By advancing a class once, the player thought his appearance should have changed a bit. At that moment, he remembers a mage class that requires transformation, otherwise it would only use basic spells. Without saying anything, the girl tries to distance herself from that threat. Upon realizing she had a magical girl class, he finds this situation hilarious. The crowd is shocked by that widely visited class choice. At that moment, her reputation was ruined, and the man demanded to see her transformation immediately. With one of her hands, she envelops her body with a maiden kaleidoscope magic. The Emperor can't believe the girl had the audacity to speak such embarrassing words in public. Suddenly, an energy invades the entire space, striking Manman. As she says to obey the Zero Oath and deliver the judgment of love, her clothes begin to transform. Now her garments are dark in color, and she wears a hat and a staff. All of her abilities were boosted by 300% in blacked out mode. With a fierce look, she was determined to represent justice by crushing bones and devouring souls. Confused, the protagonist doesn't seem to understand why all those people were gathered in one place. Suddenly, the girl calls for the master and asks him to look at the stadium. The advanced second-class Emperor is known for his high attack speed, very effective in PvP. Manman uses her magic to summon Carnivalhas, her partners in justice. Frightened, her opponent seems not to understand where those creatures or frills came from. With intermediate skill, the ground begins to split in the middle. Dembers flies in all directions, occupying the space. The player realizes his opponent became 3 times stronger when in her darkened state, that she still wasn't a match for him. With his fist, he tries to get closer and land an attack. However, he becomes extremely confused with the situation upon noticing the Nitrosis magic mirror. On the other side, the maiden was preparing to trap him with her love-filled magic using Arachne's magical silk thread. The warrior's body is suddenly wrapped in the gigantic web that restricts his movements. At that moment, he finds himself completely immobilized with nowhere to run. Manman seems determined to end the fight by sacrificing her opponent into the abyss. Shortly after, the duel ends with the victory of the Kaleidoscope Maiden. She returns to her previous physical form as the crowd cheers for the witnessed duel. Wang Yangshu seems pleased to see that Manman was able to win the battle on her own and apologizes for the previous events. But she doesn't seem the least bit bothered about having to fight as a magical girl. Noticing the despicable worm on the ground, the young man starts kicking his body after finding out what he did to his partner. However, he quickly flees like a complete coward, crying out for help. Suddenly, a voice announces that the Union people have lost again because of that group. Despite everything, the young girl knows that the man who lost that fight was a complete idiot. Wang Yangshu doesn't seem to recognize that girl who exchanged words with him. He only remembers the name Jupiter, a total hothead from pilot Asuka. Gaxia Kayan asked her to inform him that there was a delivery for the warrior which could yield special rewards. At that moment, his eyes light up the possibility of receiving another payment. Asuka says that a monster was living among the people outside and they needed a player's help. Wang Yangshu seems interested in learning more details, like the monster's level and appearance. The responsibility was being passed to the protagonist since no one else was willing to deal with the situation. Irritated, his wife cannot believe that kind of attitude. However, the hero believes it is his duty to save innocent citizens. Determined, he accepts the mission in exchange for information about the key weapon to prevent the end of the world. Asuka would forward all her requests to Sakayan, but asked him not to get his hopes up. Sasaki Yaji, whose real name is Lai Tanshin, wielded the class as weapon Murasame. Inari, the goddess in millions of game girls, is lazy and likes tofu, becoming terrifying when angry. The two were promising players, but unfortunately did not join the Union. Walking through a narrow corridor, they notice the appearance of new enemies that could be easily finished off. Sasaki Yashi holds her sword imposingly. With fluidity, she manages to cut all the bodies in half without much difficulty, stating it's an honor to die by her hands. As expected, the goddess notices that her little Tiantian was becoming more and more skilled in the art of the sword. However, the girl notices that something seems wrong. The corpses had not disappeared and they gained no exp or any kind of rewards for defeating them. Confused, Inari tries to understand her companion's movements. At that moment, the warrior realizes that those might just be normal people being controlled. Suddenly, a bug jumps onto Sasaki Yashi's face. Not understanding what is happening, Inari watches the scene. Quickly, spiders begin crawling out of the fallen corpse on the ground. Meanwhile, the sun appears between the white clouds. One of the guards warns the group that the place is extremely dangerous. The monsters that infested the area caused dozens of people to disappear, which is why everything was blocked off. However, Wang Yangsu was not an ordinary person. He was a player who had received the mission to destroy the monster. Suspicious, the officer remembers the previous player who showed up very well dressed compared to him. The previous night, the girl entered the restricted area and never returned. In utter desperation, the players cry out for help while their bodies are completely wrapped in webs. With a slight smile, the creature evaluates its prey as excellent birthing vessels. Meanwhile, the officers stated they had no news about the player who entered the restricted area. However, they believed Wang Yangsu must have a high level if he had been sent to that location. Even nervous, he claims to have a high level since he started playing the game the day the server went live. A little earlier, the protagonist was studying some books. With determination, he selected all the skills he wanted to learn based on the amount of experience points. His goal was to regain the X quickly, without worrying about his losses. The system notified that his bond level with Ji Xufu had reached level 1, unlocking a combat ability. With a smile on his face, he looks at his beloved wife, who possessed hidden unlocks. Ji Xufu was the strongest Valkyrie and mastered all combat skills. The officer tells the player that the refugees were afraid of the monsters in the area. Therefore, the boy should carry a communication device and report if he needed any help. But Wang Yangsu showed no concern and requested that they let the expert handle the situation. The two head to the entrance of the restricted area while Mammon laughs, remembering the lie about being of a high level. Meanwhile, the monsters begin to approach through the corridor carrying weapons in their hands. Their eyes were red and they emitted deafening sounds. Upon realizing they were zombies, Mammon starts preparing some spells. However, the protagonist appears confused by the situation, unable to see a health bar above their heads. The zombies continue to move disorderly through the dungeon. Wang Yangsu decides to use the data perspective to understand what was happening. He immediately notices an infestation of worm eggs. Although they resembled zombies, they were still human by nature. Now they would have to find an alternative way to fight without harming ordinary people. First, electricity spells should be used to paralyze the infected. Following orders, Mammon begins to release basic magic, always maintaining control over her powers. Wang Yangsu appears imposing with his body surrounded by electricity, ready to use his new skills. With a smile on his face, he cautiously activates the Lightning Blade spell. Since it was a spell that could only be used within the first 15 seconds of battle, its attack speed increased. However, Xiaobei believes that her contractor was insensitive for eliminating all those humans. But he explains that he only destroyed the parasites in their bodies, causing them to faint instantly. Meanwhile, a creature observed from hiding, shocked that the group had disarmed its parasite trap. Wang Yangsu notices strange movement and looks back. Authoritatively, he questions why the leader is hiding as he already knew her identity. A small leader of the insect island, known as the Silk Mistress, is skilled in using parasitic eggs and silk threads in combat. The level 40 monster feels flattered upon realizing that the human remembered her abilities. While he seemed interested in her knowledge of the dungeon, her companion became irritated. However, the protagonist is determined to eliminate the one who manipulated innocent people like puppets. Suddenly, he notices an unexpected blade attack coming his way. Wang Yangsu manages to dodge, even without recognizing that type of strike as a hidden power of the creature. At that moment, he begins to reflect on the presence of another monster in the dungeon. Behind the Silk Mistress, two girls begin to approach. They were Sasaki Yaji and Inara, who looked like combat zombies under the spider's control. At once, they realized those were the missing players. Apparently, their minds were completely controlled by the creature, obeying all its commands. Sasaki Yaji begins moving her body in a strange way. The protagonist is completely shocked by the scene he witnesses. The spider was tired of being mistreated by players in the game and now sought her revenge. Suddenly, a large explosion occurs, throwing the whole group far away. However, the hero knew that it was just an excuse for the creature to kill whoever it wanted. Following orders, the warrior begins to move with her blade. Watching her, Wang Yangsu seems confused about whether he would have to fight hand-to-hand. His partner is already using all of her powers to create a consistent defense. In front of him, Inara appears completely unaware of the real situation, as if in a deep sleep. Jake Sufu cannot believe that the great goddess allowed her mind to be so easily manipulated. Meanwhile, Mammon and Xiaobei prepare their best spells. With a smile on her face, the enemy watches them intriguingly. To defend themselves, Mammon would need to transform as quickly as possible. With one strike, the warrior attacks the protagonist with her powerful blade. Murasane was an S-class demonic sword capable of cutting karma. When equipped with Kathena-type weapons, it enhanced attack, evasion, and accuracy. The continuous fall technique reduced the physical strength required, being the favorite move of ancient hunters. Wang Yangsu realizes the blow almost struck him. Thankful he avoided danger. Grabbing her sharp blade, the girl runs to attack her opponent. Ground retraction is a special ability used to reduce the space-time distance between two people. Confused, the protagonist notes that those abilities were legal. However, the movements were large and aggressive, creating the ideal opening for a counterattack. Suddenly, he uses the basic downward kick and manages to hit his opponent. Sasaki Yaji falls on top of the hero and begins to feel something strange in her body. Her goal was to bring the fight to the ground in order to gain a minimal advantage. On the other side, his wife seemed curious about the entire situation. To her, those players' tricks were extremely dishonest. Her current attributes were linked to the contractor's level. Even though she was just a minor goddess from the east, she was still 20 levels above him, making her a difficult opponent to handle. Mammon thinks she was extremely careless for not considering she might be captured before transforming. The two girls had their bodies completely restrained by sticky webs. The creature was extremely confident it would win that battle without major difficulty. In addition, its plan was to make the girls wear more revealing uniforms in the Spider Lady's squad. Wang Yangsu runs in desperation while the warrior attempts to strike him with an effective blow. That spider had separated the group to defeat them one by one. Suddenly, Sasaki Yaji withdraws her sword. It was the slash of the god of slaughter as snow falls upon the earth. The protagonist pretends to be intimidated for a second, but he was already preparing his counterattack. With the Qinhong Gold Slayer in his hands, he begins a powerful defensive move. Wang Yangshu had played in the International League, so he knew all the tricks of the Japanese players. At that moment, the Spider Lady begins to sense an unusual force coming toward her. Confused, she cannot understand how that is possible. The difference between them did not seem so great, but the hero did not want to fight her. Worried, the spider notices her energy bar reaching critical levels, but she needed to eliminate one of her opponents first. Meanwhile, Mammon begins her transformation. Sweat drips down the creature's face as she realizes what is happening around her. The Maiden of the Kaleidoscope casts her dark energy beam of love and justice. All the spells go directly toward the Spider Lady, who cannot properly defend herself. Angrily, she demands that the punishment of justice for transgressions be accepted. However, Mammon seems uncomfortable having to declare such phrases after becoming a magical warrior. Suddenly, she realizes her enemy fled quickly without leaving a trace. Annoyed, the sorceress realizes she didn't have enough time to claim her reward. The creature had likely escaped back to the dungeon, a safer place. Crossing the portal, she arrives at the spider's lair. Irritated by her own recklessness, she decides the best course is to hunt more humans to regain strength and defeat the youth. However, Wang Yangsu appears behind the Spider Lady like a shadow. With a smile on his face, he states he came to Insect Island only to deliver a surprise. In despair, she tries to retreat, unable to understand how the protagonist invaded her dungeon. Wang Yangshu had a key capable of connecting him directly to that island. Using all of her charm, the spider tries to convince the young man not to eliminate her, suggesting he could use her as a new ally. The plan was to make him lower his guard to find the perfect chance to strike. However, the warrior showed no interest in that proposal. Gripping his weapon firmly, he ends the life of the Spider Lady, stating that he already had a beautiful wife. That victory brought good rewards to Wang Yangsu, such as silk and a spider ring. In another room, the girl awoke from a deep sleep and opened her eyes. Awake, the two seemed confused by everything that had happened, unable to remember much clearly. The maiden explains they were manipulated by a monster, losing consciousness and becoming puppets. Despite everything, the threat had been defeated, and now they were safe. Sasaki Yaji seems surprised at the possibility of such a low-level girl having defeated such a powerful monster. Crossing the portal, Wang Yangsu confirms the story was true, and that he delivered the final blow to the creature. However, the warrior remained confused because his level was still lower. Touching her arm, Inari asks her to calm down. Now the two should leave together, but Sasaki Yaji asks her friend to wait. The goddess Inari says she had a bad feeling about that boy who resembled a famous Japanese player. Upon hearing those words, the girl is shocked to associate the youth with the so-called demon king of the sixth heaven. Suddenly, Sasaki Yashi's body begins to grow increasingly hot. Next to her, Inari shares the same sensation, feeling her stomach burn. The two fall to the ground with blurred senses. Wang Yangsu realizes that even after the monster was defeated, the parasite left in their bodies remained. Now he would have to examine both of them in order to remove the parasite through surgery. However, the two did not want him to approach them. With a smile on his face, he asks them not to doubt his medical skills and manual dexterity. Screams can be heard from all corners as he rummages through the players' bodies. With the parasite in his hands, the protagonist declares that the procedure was a success. Sasaki Yaji and Inari are exhausted and blushing as they reflect on what happened. Wang Yangsu holds the parasite in his hands and carefully observes the interesting creature. After completing the exploration of the human body, he receives rewards and earns the title Demon King of the Sixth Heaven. Feeling the humiliation on her skin, the warrior holds her blade, declaring she would commit suicide immediately. Despite everything, the protagonist warns that he would take her as his partner if she killed herself. Meanwhile, the other girls watch the entire discussion, trying to wrap everything up calmly. Asuka reports that the monster outside the civil zone was level 40, but the group managed to defeat it with wisdom. Upon hearing that Wang Yangsu was the one responsible for ending it all, Sayakayan spits out her drink. The one assigned to deal with the spider was Sasaki. but apparently the girl seemed quite disturbed. With determination on his face, the protagonist is ready to receive the rewards requested for completing the mission. Anicap makes an offer for the hero to lick from the back of her feet. However, his wife is already tired of people trying to mess with her contractor. She says the vice president of the Royal Union wielded a weapon called Thunder Apple of Darkness that evolved from a key. However, leading Yefen harbored resentment toward the young man for stealing the Forgotten Paradise key during the auction. If that was the reason, Wang Yangsu was fully willing to sell the item for 20 million. After paying a huge amount, Xia Kaiyan didn't understand why the protagonist wanted to sell it for such a low price. Outside, the afternoon was approaching with a blue sky full of clouds. Wang Yangsu could sell the Forgotten Paradise key after using the Tanhan God's Lair to register the coordinates. Since it was a distant location, the teleportation function could be temporarily disabled after use. In the end, even if he sold the teleport stone, he could still enter the Forgotten Land. His wife seemed increasingly confused by those crazy plans, but the protagonist didn't seem afraid of anything, considering himself the strongest player of all. With a smile on his face, leading Yifen talked about Wang Yangsu, who had offered himself for a meeting. He quickly grabs the girl with his hands, suspicious of the young man's intentions. Watching the situation, one of his girls offers help. With clear curiosity, he asks if she knows anything about Wang Yangsu. For the right price, the vice president could learn everything about him and even about his Valkyrie partner. Jag Surafu and Wang Yangsu walk through a neighborhood with strange vibes and bright, very cyberpunk lights. The protagonist asks his wife to stay alert for any suspicious signs. As the door opens, the two prepare for any kind of threat. Suddenly, the most beautiful women welcome the player. Even confused, he seems to enjoy the situation. However, he says he only wants to talk business with leading Nifen. One of the girls holds his arms, realizing he was quite tired and used to that kind of environment. Determined, they wanted to make him feel at ease and would need to take the initiative. Wang Yangsu settles onto a sofa as a blonde sits on his lap. Irritated, his wife wants to understand why so many NPCs were gathered in such a seedy place. The vice president explains that this was the Forbidden Paradise, the bar where captured monsters and weak NPCs gather. Upon hearing that voice, Jake Sufu turns her gaze toward the shadows. The man says he chose that place because he wanted to feel relaxed while talking. However, he didn't believe the contractor would be such a popular person. His wife doesn't buy into all that nonsense and seems increasingly suspicious. Bowing his body, he introduces himself to the strongest Valkyrie as leading Yefen. His expression changes completely upon realizing that the player knew his true identity. But he declares that he knew everything about her, her partner, and their intentions. Touching her shoulder, he declares that he also knew about the key to saving the world. Trying not to sound arrogant, he asks if the girl would consider being his partner. Leading Yifen makes the request for her to sign a contract with him, aiming to save both worlds. However, Jig Sufu seems uninterested in the proposal and steps away from the player. In the end, she questions who that player even was to offer her a contract. The vice president explains that he had heard her partner used to be the master of the game world in the past. Furthermore, he was certain that collecting keys and saving the world as a group was more efficient than being a lone wolf. In the girl's mind, his proposal starts to make a little sense. Her contractor was very strong and didn't need her help. However, she still had some doubts and begins to recall all the important moments, like when the two worked together as a couple to break a spell. Reflecting on her actions, she seems quite undecided. In her mind, unique moments with her contractor come to the surface. With determination, she refuses the proposal, choosing to fight alongside Wang Yangsu rather than save the world with leading Yifen. As she turns her back, she states that she believes in the bond established between two contracted individuals. Irritated, the vice president realizes he had spent a fortune buying useless information from that fox. Even without being able to attack players in that city, he holds his weapon firmly. Leading Yifen had a trump card. His main weapon ignored all those restrictions. Before he could strike Jik Sufu, his attack is blocked by the protagonist. Suddenly, Wang Yangsu appears holding a cup in his hand. He pours all the water from the container onto leading Yifen. The hero pretends the whole situation was a huge accident and apologizes for being so clumsy. Through data manipulation, he caused everyone to take a brief pause. Behind him, all the NPCs have fainted into a deep sleep. Shortly after, he begins a movement with his hands. Wang Yangsu changes out of his casual clothes into his battle outfit, holding his powerful sword. Then, in a joking tone, he taunts his opponent, saying his electric staff was nothing compared to his weapon. Hearing those insults, leading Yifen becomes increasingly irritated. Face to face, the three begin to assess the situation they are in. Two main weapons were detected in the same location, unlocking a new dungeon. The Golden City Reversal Casino would be opening soon. The first person to complete it would receive a generous reward. The latest notices given to players showed that the dungeon would appear in the adjacent 10 kilometers area with no time limit. The vice president of the Royal Union didn't expect two keys could open a new dungeon together. That's why he needed Wang Yangsu's weapon. However, he had already left the location and was trying to force open a door with brute strength. Leading Yifen had the power to control the entire bar, preventing anyone from escaping his grasp. In the end, that door was just data that could be easily broken. Accused of data destruction in American football style, he attempts a new strike. After breaking down the door, Jake Sufu says that the vice president made some idiotic proposals to her. Confused, Giffen becomes increasingly irritated upon realizing the player was able to destroy the door made of rare materials. In the end, he decides to let the two escape, presuming he would find them later in the dungeon along with her partner. Meanwhile, other players were discussing the Golden City Reversal Casino that had just appeared. However, another group of players launched threats, claiming no one could beat them. From afar, two girls watched the entire situation with some judgment. In the regular inn, everything seemed quieter. Wang Yangsu wanted to use the time to clear the dungeon and receive the first reward. His new acquired item was a portable room equipped with furniture and specific food for up to 10 people. With a smile on his face, he asked who would be the first to show their cooking skills by preparing some dishes. But all the NPCs remained seated, without moving a muscle after his words. Apparently, none of them really knew how to cook or wanted to take on that role in the group, which sparked a discussion. In the end, Kai Feng was put in charge of preparing food for the 5 of them, since she already made the food sold in the shop. Meanwhile, a mysterious man sitting in his chair analyzes the situation. The opening of the dungeon was an unexpected event, making everything more interesting. Lord Bea orders Ruby and Jane to assist the dungeon boss in the Golden City Reversal Casino. However, the Valkyries do not seem willing to accept orders from a mere dungeon boss. Next to him, Aster starts getting increasingly irritated, realizing they were refusing to follow the master's commands. Lord Bea explains that in terms of combat power, that should be the weakest dungeon boss. But in his casino, even the strongest player would be defeated. Since she wasn't that strong, Kai Feng would be in charge of the meals and wouldn't need to go into battle. Now they had to plan how to clear the Golden City Reversal Casino. An abundant number of players gather in front of a large gate. All of them seem curious to participate in that dungeon. One of the officials asks for silence, stating that players couldn't get too close. At that moment, the guards had to trust those players to save the world, even though it seemed impossible. Meanwhile, a group of girls seems extremely confident about completing the mission. Shortly after, they notice the presence of the guy who stole all their rewards. With a smile on his face, Wang Yangsu waves to everyone, seeming extremely sociable. Turning to Manmin, he asks the girl to enter the dungeon first since he needed to gain a bit of experience beforehand. In Million Game Girls, it was possible to earn EXP by clearing dungeons without leveling up from defeating monsters. Manmin doesn't seem convinced by his plan, but he tries to make her agree. Shouting, the NPC states that she didn't care about that trail of stupid games. Meanwhile, the monsters were spreading through the forest of the dungeon. With one strike, Wang Yangsu takes down his 18th creature, complaining about the increasingly ridiculous world fusion. Jake Sufu doesn't understand why he left Manmin, since her spells would be more efficient for EXP than dying to monsters. The protagonist knew the girl's strength, but she still lacked PvP experience. Suddenly, an attack comes from behind both of them cautiously. But Wang Yangsu dodges without much trouble, knowing those attacks wouldn't work on him. Lying on the ground, the man can't understand how his opponent detected the strike. With his group, the player approaches with his weapon pointed at the target. His goal was to rob that kill stealer, demanding all his money and items in exchange for his life. Upon realizing the player refused to hand over his belongings, he uses the magic bullet shooter ability. However, he notices a strange and unusual situation. Wang Yangsu came prepared with several basic abilities so he wouldn't be killed instantly. Due to his tendons and bones reinforced at the beginner level, he was capable of piercing through his chest. Laughing, the young man claims to have studied his lesson, summing it all up as pure luck. That group used equipment and skills that gave them karma attributes. As the players got closer, he called out for help from his wife. Using her protection spells, Jake Sufu summoned the unlimited sword. Shortly after, she launched all those weapons toward the enemies. But it didn't seem to have a satisfying effect, as the weapons didn't cause a single scratch. Laughing, they realized the attacks were just barking with no bite. Upon realizing he was at level 30, Wang Yangsu decided to change classes for the second time. Confused, the players didn't understand how their opponent had reached such a high level so quickly. Looking back, he notes that the attacks had actually been aimed at the monsters. Now the protagonist was ready to choose his new class. Entering the system, he began researching his options. By interfering with destiny, one could influence the course of the stars, and those who turned that into reality were the shepherds of the stars. At that moment, Wang Yangsu realized that Shepherd of the Stars was his new favorite class. In the past, the hero tampered with the system surrounded by dead creatures. Of all players, only a few hundred had chosen the Cartomancer class without knowing where to go from there. That happened 1 month after Million Game Girls was released in Kishu. Level 36 was a Shepherd of the Stars. The intro page spoke a lot about fate, but didn't mention whether the class specialized in long or short-range combat. Kishu claims he didn't really know how to use his class and had been kicked out of several parties. That's why he was wondering if he could find more people to play that same class. Despite everything, he didn't seem to regret the choice, finding it all a bit romantic. Upon hearing his words, the protagonist becomes confused by his decisions. Kishu explains that using the power of a small person to alter the movement of great stars could be romantic. Deep down, he really liked the chance of that class when casting its magic. The hero decided to guide the trajectory of the stars with his fingertips like the breath of the sun and the interwoven power. The starlight converges as he announces the power to crush the stars. In complete despair, the other players didn't understand anything that was happening, but one of them knew that the opponent was chanting a powerful spell that needed to be interrupted immediately. Wang Yangshu declares that it's too late and all would witness the great event of the shattered stars. Suddenly, his body becomes enveloped in energy and he begins to explode the stars. It's quite difficult for a shepherd of the stars to use their abilities, requiring the right sign and position. Despite everything, he was capable of mastering it all, and his luck was excellent. The players were shocked and afraid of what was about to happen. Suddenly, he announces the robbery, demanding they hand over all equipment, gold, and even health potions. One of them decides to hand over his items but reaches behind his back for a weapon. Even as a veteran in the game, he did not believe he could block that kind of move. Upon pulling the trigger, the quadruple magic bullet is released. With eyes glowing, the player knew that ability didn't even exist in the game. However, magic bullets can be easily trained if one attends a specialized magic shooter class. Wang Yangshu used to have a friend who played that class and could shoot 9 times in a row. After defending himself, he manages to bring his powerful blade close to the opponent's face. At that moment, his thought was only to use a grenade to eliminate them both. With a smile on his face, he seemed willing to sacrifice his own life to defeat the young man. Suddenly, the enemy player, 10 levels higher, is successfully struck, earning 12,000 experience points. Jagsufu realized that the master's killing intent and determination still needed improvement. With a fierce look, she questions whether other players would be selfish enough to stubbornly resist, but they seem determined to follow any kind of order. Wang Yangshu celebrates as he realizes he earned a total of 20 million in gold, along with dozens of grade B items. Shortly after, Jagsufu loses her balance and begins to feel unwell. Something was moving inside her body. The level up of her contractor brought back some memories and details about saving the world. At that very moment, the empty cube inside her told her to gather all the keys to open it and save the world. By the end of the day, they would need to ensure all the keys were in their possession. Jagsufu understands that in the future, they might have to fight for other players' keys if they choose not to cooperate. But he doesn't seem worried at all, since he considers himself the strongest player and has his wife by his side. Meanwhile, a group of people was gathering in front of the building. Mammon appeared very worried about Wang Yangshu's delay. She didn't see herself as just a sidekick, capable of fighting her own battles and earning rewards. From a distance, a player observed Wang Yangshu's companion's boldness, who even with a low level, sought out her rewards. As he approached, he asked if Wang Yangshu had survived the destruction of City G. Turning around, Mammon seemed not to believe in that man's obsession with her contractor. Before he could become irritated by the girl's provocations, his NPC tried to control his impulsiveness. Moreover, he couldn't break the contract with her and act recklessly. At that moment, he kneels and begs Xiaoyu not to abandon him, swearing not to lose to Wang Yangshu this time. As she strikes him, she demands that he not bother her anymore. Realizing he couldn't resist a woman's strategic attack, the situation became concerning. Xiaoyu offers a contract where all gold and experience gained by him would be directed to her, allowing her to control every move. Quickly, he begins to show fear on his face and states he would let the girls go. Wang Yangshu and Jagsufu appear elegantly, discussing the next steps. The player tries to gain the protagonist's attention but is ignored due to his focus on clearing the dungeon. A portal begins to form in front of the group. After a brief loading time, they manage to enter the Golden City Reversal Casino. However, the place was not what they had imagined, expecting something more like a real casino. Suddenly, a voice calls for the hero, who becomes confused trying to understand why strangers were calling him. The NPCs Ruby and Jane were ready to get their revenge by fighting the warrior. Confused, the protagonist didn't understand those 2 Valkyries dressed as bunnies. However, they were not dressed that way because of the protagonist. It was all part of their superior's personal preference. Suddenly, the dungeon boss appears to welcome the new players to the Golden City. First, it would be necessary to clear a few levels before facing him. To complete the first level, Happy Resort, they needed to collect 3 holiday victory medals. In any duel with mutual consent, the winner would receive a victory medal, while the loser would lose one. With a smile, he announces he's waiting to be challenged in the depths of the casino. The image disappears completely, wishing everyone the best experience. Sweating, Wang Yangshu realizes that was the final boss. Now that all instructions had been heard, the girl was eager for a duel with the protagonist. Mammon seemed confused by those vague options, but the best thing to do was to observe. Ariandel declares checkmate against her opponent, stating she won the game. The chess master NPC realizes he would have to forfeit his medal. With a dragged-out voice, he declares that his opponent was able to end his 19-game winning streak. Now players could continue challenging each other in order to win their medals. However, one of them states that no one would be crazy enough to play against that NPC. The girl declares a winner, since no one could directly face a god-killing strike. Upon losing the duel, the player keeps his medals in negative numbers. Energy completely envelops his body, causing him to vanish through execution by banishment. Now Mammon seems to have understood the entire situation, while the Valkyrie immediately demands a duel. With determination, she declares that she wants to be the person to fight. Sasaki Yaji points at the warrior, declaring she would never forget the humiliation he had caused her. At that moment, he gets nervous upon noticing that she was the samurai imprisoned by Lady Spider M. With a smile on her face, she declares that the two should fight fairly. However, their objectives are interrupted by a person stepping in front of her. He claimed to be the one who would face Wang Yangsu, as they had been rivals the last time they played. Sasaki Yaji realizes that player would need to learn a lesson from her unique sword style. Face to face, the two exchange taunts through a heated argument. The man returns the provocation by saying she should experience a bit of his Purple Thunder 7 daggers. Meanwhile, Wang Yangsu observed the scene carefully, somewhat confused. On the other side, Inari couldn't help feeling a threatening aura coming from that NPC. She seemed to harbor some kind of powerful fox deity. At that moment, the hero informs them that many people were waiting to fight him, hence the Valkyrie. They begin to discuss the possibility of leaving that insolent one for Lord Baya. Suddenly, she makes an unusual proposal where Wang Yangsu could choose the form of combat. In the end, they start playing backgammon with the pieces resting on the Valkyrie's back. Upon noticing the situation, Sufu becomes irritated with her contractor's attitude. Meanwhile, his goal was merely to emerge victorious from that duel. Holding a piece in his hand, he declares he would use the cosmos of heaven and earth to break the celestial demon transformation. Shortly after, he places the piece in a strategic position and waits. The girl complains of pain upon realizing that her back was practically swollen. About to lose, Ruby seemed confused by the game and didn't know what her next move should be. However, she got a trick up her sleeve. With her face flushed, she unleashes the secret killer move, Doppelganger. Through her copies, she tries to approach the protagonist, asking him to relax his mind. Sufu is shocked by the Valkyrie's embarrassing actions. If the contractor couldn't play the game, Ruby would be victorious. However, he starts to notice something strange. Suddenly, a notification states that it was an illegal move and the player would be punished immediately. A portal opens beneath her feet and begins to suck in her body. With the opponent vanished, the player automatically wins and receives a holiday victory medal. Meanwhile, Jane realizes her colleague was truly a complete idiot for wasting all her chances. Angrily, the player declares that Wang Yangsu would die the next time they met. But none of them seem to care about that threat, knowing he could continue leveling up further. Many people are gathered in one place, possibly watching some performance or competition. Amidst the crowd, a female player declares she had won the battle and that everyone could celebrate with her. At that moment, a holiday victory medal is lost, leaving only one medal remaining for Ozuren. With a curious look, Sufu seems to try to understand what challenge required bathing suits. Suddenly, the player questions if her sumo fight was being looked down upon, agreeing to any kind of challenge. Without any fear, his wife was eager for a sumo battle. Before starting, the player informs that the standard sumo rules would be used. Upon accepting any kind of rule, the powerful Valkyrie's clothes begin to change and she becomes very embarrassed. Those were special gifts of sumo battle clothes for them. Now the first move would be the Shiko, an exercise frequently done by wrestlers. But the woman didn't seem willing to try it, covering Wang Yangsu's eyes instead. In sumo, there was no signal to start the fight, so the girl immediately charged forward. That move was one of the 48 winning techniques in sumo wrestling. Sufu realized she had been completely reckless for not being able to dodge. However, she knew she only needed to adjust her breathing and wait for the perfect opportunity to counterattack. Her opponent flew toward her, claiming that it wasn't a freestyle fight. In a sumo duel, hands could only be used to push your opponent, punches and kicks weren't allowed. With a smile on her face, the girl seemed to be enjoying that opportunity. Suddenly, she appeared behind the Valkyrie, spotting the perfect chance for victory. According to the rules, pulling the belly cloth was strictly forbidden, but swimsuits were allowed. Sufu stood completely motionless as she felt her garments being pulled, totally dominated by her opponent. With anger on her face, she questioned what was against the rules. According to the records of the island, Nomi no Sukyun is the goddess of sumo wrestling. Wang Yangsu knew that his wife's victory in that fight would be complicated. If you strictly follow the rules, the recent move would be considered illegal. Because of that, the hero warns his wife that the rules were a lie and that the match should be freestyle. Hearing that advice, Sufu headbutts her opponent with all her strength. Nomi no Sukyun stops the blood from her nose while questioning why the woman believed in that assumption. But the Valkyrie had a special reason to listen to the wise words of her trusted partner. Her opponent begins mocking the girl, claiming she had pulled some tricks. Immediately, Sufu declares she would no longer hold back and was ready for any type of attack. Afterwards, some players asked Nomi no Sukyun to describe how she felt at that moment. The sensation was one of near freezing, as if regret ran down her spine. After all that, she lost consciousness almost instantly. In the end, she would describe it as if heaven and earth had turned upside down. The match ends when the opponent is totally unconscious and the holiday victory medal is acquired. With a satisfied look, Sufu informs that she was a good competitor when it came to close combat. Fallen on the ground, Nomi no Sukun was completely defeated. Her partners seemed confused by those abilities within the game, but she seemed extremely radiant with a unique feeling after defeating a powerful opponent. Suddenly, she feels embarrassed for having forgotten to change her clothes. For now, they had acquired 2 medals and were looking for a third. The boss's figure appears to remind players that the time for fun was always limited. Currently, there were 72 players with 3 medals, and when the number reached 100, those players would advance to the next stage. Therefore, the rest should act quickly to remain in the game and not get eliminated. Now they would have to be faster and Mammon would have to find a way to get her medals. However, she knew the easiest step was to obtain another medal for her contractor. Despite everything, Wang Yangsu wanted the girl to do her best in critical moments like that. Katiobe knew that opinion wasn't shared by Mammon's heart. She remained quiet for a long time after realizing there was no meaning in speaking if she couldn't convey her ideas. In silence, Mammon reflected on the importance of everything, but couldn't speak about the topic. Suddenly, the two began searching for another NPC who could be challenged. Master Mafakai offers a yo-yo match, but the protagonist seems uninterested in shooting at amazing teenagers. Durian is eager to find out who can prepare the best preserved dish with tofu and herring. A beautiful NPC offers a tempting game where one would have to last more than 10 minutes, but Wang Yangsu already had a wife. Desperate, he starts realizing that the NPCs were completely crazy. Meanwhile, the player obtained his 3rd holiday victory medal and successfully advanced to the next level. Provoking the samurai girl, he declares she would have to hurry to avoid elimination, as she had only 1 medal. However, a samurai could quickly resolve her battles, and she obtained 2 more medals. From afar, Wang Yangsu notices that Period enjoyed taking the easy path by fighting other players. Seeking another medal, the girl asks if anyone was available for a duel. Using the strategy observed earlier, the protagonist offers a friendly fight where the best would emerge victorious. Despite the offer, the girl recognizes that Face, the one who defeated someone 10 levels higher. Without wasting any time, the girl turns her back and runs away as fast as she can. At that moment, Sufu concludes that someone was intentionally putting targets on their backs. A little earlier, Xiaoyu had been selling information about troublesome players, informing others about Wang Yangsu. At the dock, the hero tried to relax a little and think about what to do. The biggest problem was that he couldn't find anyone for a challenge, and the slots were quickly running out. Next to him, a fisherman informed him that the most important thing in fishing was not to rush the situation. That was Zaya, the fishing master, and he was willing to engage in a duel. Looking at the NPC's clothing, Wang Yangsu realized that this was Zhang Zaya. He would help the protagonist prepare the fishing rod and everything needed, but they had to find fish bait. None of that seemed like a problem given all his materials at hand, but he wasn't sure how to win a fishing tournament. Zaya informed him there was a special fish in that area of the sea, and whoever caught it first would win. Despite it being very vague, Wang Yangsu decided to accept the competition. When playing for the first time, he had been the first player to achieve the God of Fishing accomplishment, so he was confident. Shortly afterward, he felt something caught on the hook. Using all his strength, he pulled the rod out of the sea. It was a wisdom fish, which added 15 permanent intelligence attribute points after use. Zaya was impressed by the boy's skill at catching rare fish. They both returned to their positions upon realizing it wasn't the desired species. A little later, they caught a Tyandi snapper, a swordfish, and even the corpse of an alien from Mars. Sufu seemed suspicious of the fishing master, asking if he was trying to deceive her contractor. Meanwhile, the boss's image appeared, warning players to hurry up and obtain their medals. Wang Yangsu seemed anxious about the entire situation and somewhat lost. Suddenly, his wife removed her clothes and asked her contractor to look at her. Her goal was to help him relax more, reminding him there was still time. The protagonist wasn't expecting such a proactive attitude from his wife, and he genuinely seemed cheered up. After seeing her dressed that way, he managed to relax a bit and was very grateful. Looking at his hands, he realized those rare items weren't necessary and he should clear his mind. Shortly afterward, he raised the fishing rod again, holding a fish. However, that one looked extremely normal, like a fish used for making soup. But Master Zia informed him that his opponent had managed to complete the mission he'd been trying to accomplish for a long time. With the 3 medals, he could advance to the next stage, yet he was extremely intrigued by the common fish. Driven by curiosity, he cut open its belly, looking for some hidden secret within its body. Suddenly, powerful energy and flashes of light were emitted everywhere. Wang Yangsu had obtained a rare item, the miraculous key. A special item was added to the hero's inventory. Even without clearing a dungeon, they had already obtained the key. Sufu tried to understand what was special about the fish for it to contain a powerful key. Looking at the master, she questioned who that man really was and everything he knew. However, he claimed to be just a guide who liked fishing, and now he could go on his way, leaving completely satisfied. The two watched his departure in complete silence. But the contractor's wife seemed suspicious of that NPC. Besides, he seemed to be hiding some kind of tightly kept secret. Meanwhile, the number of players advancing to the next phase continued to rise, reaching 96. Mammon was quiet in a corner and either way didn't plan on advancing. Yahello knew if her friend continued cultivating negative emotions, she would enter a dark path of no return. The girl seemed increasingly depressed, claiming that the path of evil wasn't so bad. Sitting alone in a corner, she looked completely lost and discouraged. Suddenly, level 22 Luluka appeared to inform Mammon she should hold her head high and feel proud of being a magical girl. Confused, Mammon didn't understand who that player was or how she could be so young. Luluka introduced herself as the magical girl of love and hope. However, Mammon didn't want company and desiring to be alone for as long as possible. The player informed her that if she continued acting miserable and sad, she would never become a magical girl again. Upon hearing those words, Mammon began to pay more attention. Even though she didn't like dueling with children, she couldn't ignore people looking for fights. Instantly, the two activated their respective transformations. The Kaleidoscope Maiden was ready to destroy her opponent in the name of justice. Meanwhile, Luluka transformed her burning courage into a flaming spear. Shortly afterward, people started noticing a fight between two magical girls. Typically, a magical girl was younger, but players noticed that one of them was much older. Mammon questioned if their fight would begin in that location. However, Luluka informed her that magical girls didn't fight each other. If she wanted to show her true power, she should destroy evil creatures. Suddenly, Mammon noticed the presence of strange monsters and became startled. Without wasting any time, Luluka used her Spear of Courage against the opponents and earned 120 magic points. Defeating opponents with magnificent combat skills was the best way for magical girls to increase their magical power. Mammon seemed to completely understand the rules and at that moment was determined to raise her level. The competition began, and the Kaleidoscope Maiden summoned her ghouls for battle. Meanwhile, her colleagues seemed to be having more and more fun. An explosion occurred, scattering debris everywhere. Luluka had already earned a good number of points and continued to accumulate even more. With a smile on her face, she warned everyone to stop their bad behavior or face punishment. In the audience, players seemed to love that type of fight. Mammon ordered the ghoul to destroy the opponent with a powerful bite. Disappointed, the players weren't there to watch horror movie scenes or brutal events. As a tip, Luluka warned her big sister that she would lose because her spells lacked love and hope. Without showing it, Mammon grew increasingly annoyed with the situation that didn't match her usual behavior. With the mobs defeated, a new enemy appeared, a malicious female portrait. The woman didn't understand how she woke up again, hoping she was already off duty. Luluka was delighted to find the evil old hag who would be transformed into her supreme shining form. Confused, the opponent seemed unhappy with that kind of provocation. Before the magical girl could move, her body was enveloped by something evil. Furthermore, she managed to capture the maiden due to her extremely high level, at number 50. Mammon reflected on whether she looked like a magical girl while tied up. The two were completely bound, unable to move any part of their bodies. Now they would learn a lesson, and the evil woman started hitting the girls. Meanwhile, the players seemed to be enjoying watching that entire scene from the audience. Mammon believed it was impossible to win the battle against Quilu, but she still had the option to interrupt the competition. On the other side, Luluka's clothes were being removed from her body. With a smile on her face, Quilu asked the two to surrender willingly before they were punished more cruelly. Mammon already had a plan in mind to save that child from danger. Deep down, she knew the girl was begging for help, but Luluka seemed determined not to completely surrender to the evil woman's grasp. The audience closely observed all their movements without missing anything. She couldn't surrender to evil, and besides, she hadn't yet managed to make her big sister smile even once. Irritated, Quilu realized she could further abuse the girl by completely shaving her head. Another option would be choosing some lucky spectators to abuse Luluka. Upon hearing those words, her eyes filled with tears. Quilu knew that her companion didn't share the same opinion. Mammon knew the best solution would be to surrender so that the fight could end as quickly as possible. With a smile on her face, the evil woman offered to torture Luluka while letting Mammon leave victorious. At that moment, the Kaleidoscope Maiden began to see everything more clearly. Quilu was the evil that needed to be defeated at all costs, and the two were magical girls seeking justice. Suddenly, she started provoking the evil old witch, saying her backside had been used as a chessboard. The woman couldn't believe Mammon dared to fight without Master Wang Yangsu at her side. Having received the attention she wanted, she managed to break free from those claws. A voice announced that she wasn't violating any rules by helping her contracted partner. Yahello had used her magic book to launch a surprise attack. Thanking Yahello, Mammon said she wouldn't waste the chance given to her and activated her corrosive beam magic. Easily dodging the attack, Emerald called the young girl an idiot and asked where she was aiming. In response, the girl revealed she wasn't aiming at her, but at the trap holding Xiaoman. Relieved, the little girl thanked her savior, who replied she was just doing what a magical girl should do. Standing up, the young blonde declared they were now a trio and suggested the group be called the Magical Girl Squad. Interrupting, the fallen Valkyrie claimed that even if they united, they wouldn't be able to defeat her. Mammon said that in that case, she'd have to use her trump card. Holding a key, she revealed why she had warned Wang before he took one. Your key is the key of wisdom, which when assuming its true form becomes the divine bow Gandiva wielded by the great hero Arjuna. Shocked, Emerald wonders how another key similar to the protagonist could exist. The young witch becomes confused as she reads the weapon's description, stating it can gather everyone's thoughts. Stepping forward, Shiobe says she knows what to do and starts asking everyone watching the fight to applaud and support them. Without hesitation, the crowd begins cheering loudly for the group. Suddenly, Mammon starts feeling tremendous power coming from the weapon, which begins to glow. Trying to disrupt this, the blue-haired enemy asks why the spectators can't support her instead of the girls. Responding, one of the young men says it's because two of the trio's girls are much cooler, injuring the woman. Ashitabi approaches her friend and says she'll transfer all her magic to her. Haruka decides to do the same, humbly asking the young witch to accept her magical power. Holding the bow, Mammon says it already has enough power and something should happen soon. Refusing defeat, Emerald attacks, stating that interrupting the process is the law of victory. But her attack hits only a mirror, which shatters into pieces rather than striking the young girl. Our young witch then explains that she prepared that spell while Emerald was distracted, as she's excellent at making mirrors. Behind her opponent, the red-haired girl activates the weapon's special skill, Infinite Immeasurable Light. When the woman turns around, she's about to be hit and questions how she could lose to mere magical girls. With the shot, a massive explosion occurs. But Mammon realizes the woman is still alive. Everyone is surprised to see Emerald sprawled on the ground but still breathing with her eyes open. Haruka then says the girl won because magical girls don't take the lives of their enemies. The young witch remarks that in that case she only earned one badge, which doesn't help her at all. But even so, she wishes to thank Emerald for helping her understand what it means to be a magical girl. Taking unexpected action, the little girl decides to gift the young woman 2 of her 5 badges, which she had obtained from the boys in the audience using her charm during the battle. Suddenly, Dueo appears and announces the number of eliminated players has reached 100 and the next round is about to begin. The eliminated players start lamenting that they wasted time watching the girls battle instead of collecting more badges. Smiling, Mammon tells Haruka she'll see her in the next round. She agrees and says goodbye. We're taken to the location of the second round of the competition, where several players have already arrived. We see Wong talking to Jixufu about how most of them are unknown, remarking it would have been nice if Mammon had advanced. Suddenly, he spots the young girl next to Xiaomin. The girl waves and says that although there was an element of luck, she successfully advanced at the last moment. The game's host appears again, congratulating everyone and announcing that the next challenge will be the Minotaur's Labyrinth, surprising everyone there. Continuing his explanation, Dueo says monsters will randomly appear along the way as well as treasure chests, granting rendering points. At the end of the challenge, the 4 chosen players can enter the final level of the Adversity Rogue Casino, where they will bet directly against him. Cautiously, some young men start commenting that the competition will be fierce due to the limited number of spots. A girl then asks what will happen to players who don't score enough points. Answering, Dueo states they will be immediately banished. The girl then asks if attacking opponents in the labyrinth will be permitted, and if in case of death, points will be awarded as a reward. The man then says eliminating each other won't generate points, but it isn't forbidden if someone chooses to do so. A boy asks why the girl posed that type of question. She replies that the answer to that specific question seems highly anticipated. Another boy with an eye patch approaches the protagonist, saying he didn't expect him to advance, then asking what he did to achieve this, as many members of his guild were left behind. Wang says maybe it's because everyone got a stomachache. Irritated, the boy declares that the first thing he'll do upon entering the labyrinth is defeat him and take his weapon and partner. Without showing any reaction, our boy asks if he's only there to fight. If so, they should just enter already. Suddenly, we're taken to another place, where soldiers question several undressed young men about where they came from. Crying, the boys say they're members of the Imperial Glory Guild and that Wang defeated them and stole everything, even their clothes. Back at the game location, the protagonist tells Mammon that the boy with the eye patch will cause trouble. Thus, the girl should be careful if she encounters him as he possesses a very good weapon. The young witch then tells him not to worry as she now also has a key weapon and is a qualified magical girl. Suddenly, a bright light appears, and Dueyu announces that everyone will be teleported to the second phase. Players begin passing through the portal as the man tells them to enjoy themselves in the process. Wang notices that the place he's in is very dark, and when he tries to speak with Jixufu, he realizes she isn't by his side. The voice of the game's host emerges again, saying that to provide a more interesting experience, everyone was teleported randomly. Irritated, our boy says that separating players, even from their NPCs, is going too far. We're taken to where his partner is looking for him, feeling she doesn't need to worry as their bond remains strong. Meanwhile, Mammon finds herself in a very cold place, wondering how big the labyrinth is. Walking around, Xiobe complains about being separated from her contractor. Suddenly, someone appears out of nowhere and says they've met again, startling her. Calmer, the girl says she still doesn't know the other girl's name and asks if they're around the same age. Deciding to introduce herself first, Xiaobei claims she's lived for 1,000 years, so the little girl should show some respect. Enchanted, Ruka asks if that doesn't make her nearly an elder of magical girls, causing Xiaobei to regret starting the conversation. Walking away, the young witch tells the little girl that since they're competitors, she won't help her, while the girl chases after her. Wang is also walking around, wondering why he hasn't encountered any monsters or treasure chests yet. But suddenly, something catches his attention, and he realizes he spoke too soon as a hand emerges from the ground. A monster made of rock with red eyes appears in front of him and starts roaring. Excited, our boy says the creature is perfect for a warm-up. Grabbing his weapon, he activates the star guide of the 12 zodiac arts, specifically the one called Lion's Roar. He attacks without hesitation, causing fragments of the monster to fly everywhere. With his victory over an elite monster, the young man earns 50 points and a limited time defense boost bonus. Leaving that place, the protagonist says he hopes to find some pretty girls and not just boring stone monsters. Startling him, Sasaki appears from the wind and says she's been looking for him ever since entering the labyrinth. Wang then says he was indeed hoping to find pretty girls there, but not those he dislikes. He then declares that despite the unexpected encounter, they can finally settle the score. But the girl isn't alone, and the young man beside her says he also wants to duel the protagonist. Thinking, our boy concludes that his priority should be gain points and that it would only take a small provocation to set the two against each other. Out loud, he says he'll handle both at the same time to avoid being bothered in the future. Surprised, the duo asks how he dares underestimate them like that. Wang then activates the ability of the Gemini constellation, which creates an identical clone of himself for 10 minutes. Shocked, Sasaki asks how the boy can split into two people. She declares that such behavior is despicable, as it can't be blocked at all in hand-to-hand combat. Her partner then tells her not to be fooled by the skill, since the boy's stats also drop by 50% upon splitting. He then tells the protagonist that against enemies with high health and defense, he will surely lose if he does that. Our boy says it doesn't matter, as this skill is enough to handle him. Activating his sword, the young man releases bright blue lightning bolts. He reveals that he trained that move specifically for that fight and even changed his class to Heavenly Blade Overlord. The move is called the 7 Strikes of Blue Lightning, third form, Submerged Lightning Hell, which deals massive lightning damage to the enemy, and as he moves to attack, he claims he'll be the strongest player when this is over. Sasaki also prepares and activates her Clear Mirror Still Water ability, making her sword much faster than before. A sword that commands the wind and kills gods. Observing her speed, Wang is surprised, but without hesitation, he prepares to counterattack. For the fight with the boy, he activates his combat ability from the Taurus constellation, which greatly increases his power and strength. Looking at his male opponent, he says it seems the latter still hasn't learned his lesson, because while he is fighting to save the world, the boy is just relying on his own strength to act foolishly. With wide eyes, the young man wonders if he's really at a strength disadvantage as he feels like he's losing. Proving that he is, Wang strikes with his sword and lands a clean hit. We return to the protagonist's fight with his female opponent. The boy decides to activate his combat ability from the Capricorn constellation, which also gives him speed in everything, stating that if she really is fast, he will use that as well to win. Sasaki ends up getting hit and wounded as she wonders how she lost in a speed competition. Facing the boy, Wang asks what else he has to say now that he's lost, but the boy claims he can win whatever he wants. Now turning to the girl, our boy asks what she meant when she said he was taking revenge, considering he even saved her. Irritated, he says he lost a bit of health because of the lightning, but the biggest problem was wasting too much time. Due's voice appears and warns that the players who haven't scored points yet should hurry, revealing next that the player Aridel has already scored 1,200 points and is ahead of most. We see the young man with his NPC, who praises him for finding treasure chests so quickly. Even so, the Game Master announces that the one currently leading the ranking is Imperial Thunder with 5,000 points. We go back to where Wang is, inside a cave, freaking out for falling behind since 2 rocks appeared in his path. Taking action, he decides to run off and find his wife because that's all that matters. Sasaki asks if the boy won't chase him, and he asks why he would if he's just going to get beaten again. Annoyed, the girl calls him a coward, claiming he's not a true samurai. Far away at the foot of a volcano, Jake Sufu says she needs to help Wang earn more points urgently. But the problem is she can't find anything nearby that gives points. Suddenly someone calls her and asks if she's looking for monsters and treasure chests. The young woman tries to remember the boy's name, who gets irritated and says it's Thunder first. The player with the highest score approaches and asks if she would like to join him. But Jake Sufu refuses since he and Wang are enemies, so she won't accept anything from him. The boy then says just wandering around that zone won't help her contractor, and the girl responds that he must be fighting hard. We see our boy again, wondering if he used up all of his luck since he hasn't found anything. Suddenly, a buzzing sound catches his attention. Hidden behind a wall, Wang says his instinct is telling him there's something good there. But to his surprise, it's just Xiaobei along with Haruka. The two girls are taking a bath in hot springs and playing water fight. Unable to resist, Wang realizes he'll have to join in but fears the girls will think he's a pervert. Startling him, Sasaki appears again and asks what he's doing there hiding. The two girls who were playing here get embarrassed for being spied on. Getting dressed again, Ruruka says her mother used to say that boys who spy on girls bathing are perverts. Covering his eyes, Wang says he was just passing through and asks Xiaobei for help. But the girl just says she knows he's peeking through his fingers. Desperate, the boy says that's not true. After 10 minutes of intense embarrassment, his friend manages to clear things up and everything is fine. As Xiaobei says, they accidentally discovered that hot spring and soaking in it can restore stamina and treat anomalies. In swimwear, our boy says his friend really found a great place, and we see Sasaki also about change and decided to join in. With everyone in the spring, the magic girl reveals that she and the little one haven't found anything that gives them points yet. Wang says that doesn't matter now because there's always a recovery point before a big battle, and that means there must be a big monster nearby. Excited, Xiaomin says that's a very clever analysis and calls him Big Brother, which he doesn't like one bit. Relax, Wang says that hot spring is really good, so much that it even cured his fatigue. By his side, the lilac-haired girl agrees, saying she had only seen hot springs on television until that moment. Interrupting our boy's rest, she quickly changes the subject and asks him to accept her as his servant, because her partner, God Nari, said he was the player who swept through Japan known as the Sixth Celestial Demon King. Irritated, the boy says that's a thing of the past, and that now he's just an ordinary senior player, so he won't accept the request. Being dramatic, the woman says that if he refuses, she'll have to end her own life, making Wang change his mind quickly. The girl asks if he's really agreeing, and he says yes, just asking that she not call him Lord. He then announces that everyone will gather to hunt powerful monsters in the labyrinth, and the young woman says it reminds her of the story of Momotaro, where the protagonist is Momotaro, the other two girls are the chicken and the monkey, and she's the dog. Thinking to himself, Wang says the girl's power should make it all worthwhile, but her personality is completely off track. Meanwhile, the blonde girl says the lady is very beautiful, but clearly doesn't follow any of the girl code principles. Everyone gets dressed and prepares for battle while the slightly crazy girl keeps calling the protagonist by that strange name. Suddenly, we see someone was listening to the conversation hidden using a concealment technique that allows invisibility for 5 minutes. The cat-eared girl retreats and tells someone she heard something interesting about the group heading out to hunt high-scoring monsters. Hearing this interests the girl's leader, and she asks if in that case, they should get there first. The armored boy replies that there's no need. They just need to wait for the root to get tired and then act. Changing the subject, the girl asks why he wears a helmet even while bathing, and he says he needs to maintain his mystery. Elsewhere, Wang asks Sasaki why she insists on walking ahead if she might step into traps. The girl says that since she's playing the role of a dog, it's her job to scout the path with her sharp sense of smell. That worries the boy, and she then stops playing and says she learned to be cautious after the last lesson, so nothing will happen. As the girl finishes speaking, guess what? She steps into a trap that lifts her into the air, making her call for help. The little blonde girl says that adults are really unreliable since a true magical girl would never fall for that. Suddenly, a suspiciously placed lollipop on a rock catches her attention. Without a second thought, the little girl approaches and happily grabs the candy, since it's been a while since she had a lollipop. However, a liquid that looks like saliva starts dripping next to her, revealing itself to be the drool of a huge creature that opens its mouth ready for lunch. The little girl is quickly swallowed by the monster and tries to save herself by transforming, only to discover that she can't due to the predator's acidic saliva, which is even melting her clothes. Flashing back, she remembers when a bright light approached her claiming to be a weak NPC unable to maintain its form, then asking to form a partnership where Xiaomin would inherit its experience points and data to help other people. Back to the present moment, the little girl realizes she can't give up but must figure out how to escape. Luckily, Wang defeats the elite monster Pale Devourer and rescues her, earning 100 points as a reward. Setting the girl down, the boy says she doesn't need to thank him since he's already used to disgusting creatures like that. Enchanted, Xiaomin starts comparing him to a character called Big Brother, which makes him embarrassed. Xiaobei approaches Sasaki and asks if she needs help getting free. With everyone safe, the protagonist asks how the hell the two girls fell for such obvious traps. After that, the group continued searching for the boss's location throughout the area. But no matter the effort, they kept running into bizarre traps along the way, including a mud armadillo, a disgusting blue slime, and another with flying arrows that almost took Wang's life. Completely exhausted, the group collapses on the ground while lamenting how hard the challenge is. Xiaobei then says she's used the magic remove abnormal status and recovery several times, so she can only cast it once or twice more. Our boy thinks recovery magic is really important and says relieved that at least they finally reached the objective. Opening a door, he says that now he'll withstand the damage as the vanguard, so Sasaki should step back while the others use ranged magic. Arriving at the location, Aridel and his partner say that now they just have to follow the group's path, which must have already triggered all the traps. However, upon entering the place, the girl is hit by the mud armadillo and starts desperately calling for help. Reflecting, the boy says it's better to forget the monsters, which definitely won't be easy to deal with, and let Wang put in some effort and eliminate the first ones that appear. Inside the boss's lair, our boy senses a sinister aura and asks what's going on there. Suddenly, a dragon's head appears and says the sinister aura belongs to the boy who killed all its human players. Annoyed, the protagonist asks why it resurrected if it had been deleted and how it still remembers him. Khazar then says that he was indeed cast into the abyss of Tartarus, but an absolute power brought him back. His words make the group hold their breath because of his rotten breath, while the boy thinks that attack is really bad. Taking action, Sasaki says she'll defeat the evil dragon, and drawing her sword, claims her strike will surely cause damage. To her surprise, her blow doesn't even tickle the dragon, who smiles and says the girl's weapon is way too weak. Watching everything from hiding, the cat-eared girl is shocked, thinking it's impossible to defeat a level 50 boss. Realizing that not even Eridel, who asked her to spy and look for opportunities, will stand a chance against that. In the battle, the girl who attacked the dragon concludes she won't be able to dodge the incoming strike. Jumping in front of her, Wang grabs his weapon and activates the battle ability of the 12 zodiacs, specifically the Cancer sign. Looking back, he asks Xiaobei and Xiaoman not to hesitate to attack and do everything they can to help him and the other girl. The little girl says helping doesn't sound very fun, and her partner scolds her, saying this is not the time for that. The dragon launches its strike and says everyone there will feel its immortal power, mocking as the protagonist asks if that power is just its breath, saying he'd like to thank it for the dragon crystal it dropped at another time because he made a lot of money from that item. We then discover the boy's strategy, which is to make the dragon focus all its firepower on him, so that Sasaki can strike the lower part of its neck, which should be its main weakness. The cut makes the dragon scream, and Wang wonders if he was actually right. He then concludes that the next step is to do a stamina race to see if the dragon can keep up with him. The spy continues watching everything and is shocked at how strong and smart the boy's team is, concluding that she must warn her leader before the dragon is killed. Some time passes, and we see the monster on the ground with its HP bar nearly depleted while it swears revenge. Tired, the protagonist feels relieved that the battle is nearing its end, all going according to plan. Suddenly, Eridel appears clapping and says it was a marvelous fight, but that Wang didn't notice one little thing. That now, with the monster nearly defeated and all of them low on health, he can finally act. Starting with the elimination of Xiaoman, who seems to be the weakest. The boy grabs his Solar Thunder Spear, which causes massive damage with compound lightning and light attributes in a 200-meter radius. Running, Wang tries to protect one of his allies, then asking the boy to stop with that immediately. But it's no use, and Eridel fires a powerful shot of bright pink light, leaving everyone shocked by who the real target was, being Khazar the dragon, which will earn him many points. We then see two people sitting on a couch watching the whole scene, enchanted. One of the men comments that the blonde boy can even beat him at chess, so it's only natural he performs like this, then revealing he's excited for the boy's next fight. On the battlefield, the dragon screams, seemingly close to death, which makes the intruding pair celebrate the victory. But Khazar shows they are wrong, and saying the boy is unworthy activates his eternal resentment ability, making Eridel quickly realize he got into a bigger problem than the barrel of his weapon. Without hesitation, the dragon releases its power through its mouth and hits the cat-eared girl directly. With blood in his eyes, Khazar says that even if he's going extinct, he will always be an evil dragon and won't perish before taking revenge. Catching the creature by surprise, Wang climbs onto its head and says that in that case, it should return to the abyss with its resentment, stabbing his sword in with force to end the battle. Before dying, the dragon says it will remember him. Elsewhere, a boy observes a monster he just defeated and gets excited to see another creature. Mocking, he tells Jik Sufu that she can take care of that one and keep the points, but she says the prey isn't hers. The boy then says being that stubborn isn't good, since if she doesn't kill monsters, her master one will be eliminated. Out of nowhere, a voice from a radio announces that the protagonist has defeated a powerful boss and is currently in first place. Jik Sufu then asks if the boy beside her still wants her to kill that creature and take the points. Irritated, he grits his teeth and says he can afford to fall behind no matter what. Meanwhile, Eridel realizes he made miscalculations. His partner, lying on the ground, says she can't move. Wang approaches and says it's time to settle the score. Desperate, the blonde boy tells him to wait. Putting on his helmet, he says he withstood most of the miasma damage, so he still has plenty of health. Intrigued, the protagonist asks if he's saying he wants to fight, but the boy denies it, stating that he's actually no longer a threat. Smiling, our boy tells him to give a few more reasons if he wants to stay alive, since he had been spying the whole time. Crying, the cat-eared girl begins apologizing, saying they didn't mean to hurt anyone, and that she'll do anything if he spares her. Xiaobei feels sorry for the girl, but Sasaki says a true samurai would never let her go. To her surprise, Wang says he's no monster and will let her go. The girl then asks Eridel for help to get up. In the TV room, a man comments that it seems Moriarty was wrong about the blonde boy, but the old man says the protagonist was just lucky. Then asks if the labyrinth monster was really Khazar, since, as Wang Duio knew the creature's abilities well, he knew all along the blonde boy would fail. Denying it, the man in sunglasses says that even if the labyrinth is his, many unexpected things are happening. Back in the game, a pink-haired woman asks what those players want near her. One of the guys then says their points are way behind. So since they didn't advance and will probably be banned, it's better to have some fun before everything ends. Another guy shouts that now it's his turn. Suddenly, an explosion happens, surprising the entire group of ill-intentioned players. Mammon appears and orders everyone to stop what they're doing. Looking back, the guys ask who dares to interrupt their fun and realize it's the one responsible for summoning gluttony. Full of fear, they start running and screaming like babies. The woman who is being attacked approaches and says she didn't expect to be saved by a heroine. Mammon introduces herself and says she only saved her because she couldn't stand those guys. Asking her to wait, the pink-haired girl says she has a reward to offer, but the heroine refuses. We see Moriarty again, who says he's curious because with so many dangerous characters, Wong might be in danger too. But he is told not to worry because, as the one in charge of the casino, he knows exactly what to do if everything goes wrong. Then announcing that the biggest boss in that area was defeated, opening an entrance to the next zone called the Lava Zone. We see the young man in Ji Xufu's company complaining about being surpassed by Wong. Annoyed, the girl asks how he still wants to be her partner with that attitude and pathetic appearance. The boy then says that if she wants to leave, it won't be so easy, because his score puts him in second place and he can immediately turn her into his NPC if he wants. Screaming, he says he commands in the name of God that she kneel. With no choice, Ji Xufu obeys, clearly doing something completely against her will as she wonders how that's even possible. Explaining, the boy introduces her to his partner, a very special NPC that is a fragment of the great god Zeus, which stays hidden in his body. Laughing, he approaches the girl and asks what he should do with her now, choosing to punish her with an electric baton. While imagining his horrific fantasy, the boy gives a wicked smile. Closing her eyes, the girl thinks that all she wishes is that her level were higher and her darkness restored. Suddenly, something hits the boy right in his nether regions, and he starts screaming in despair. Wang appears and asks how he dares to harm his wife in his absence, then tells Xiaobei to attack again. Ji Xufu is happy to see the protagonist, while the evil boy asks what he's doing there. Sasaki realizes that he used to be part of the Imperial Glory Guild and was disgusting even back then. But the boy uses his trick and orders everyone there to kneel. The three girls quickly obey while complaining that they can't resist. Laughing, the enemy says that this is his absolute god power, and after finishing Wan, he'll be number 1 in points. To his misfortune, his trick didn't work on our boy, who attacks him while saying he should keep dreaming. The boy is thrown far away without even being able to defend himself. Furious, he asks why the protagonist is immune to Zeus' power if even Ji Xufu isn't. Explaining, the hero says that the fragments of Zeus don't even tickle his body, since he was the one who shattered him into 114,154 pieces. His opponent then says that's all a lie because he knows he's just a low-level player. Laughing, Wang asks how he still calls himself king of cannons if he doesn't even have one anymore since it exploded. That makes the boy so angry that he charges in recklessly. As he approaches, he says that verbal skills can't bridge the power gap like our boy thinks. We return to the TV room, where Moriarty states that he knows defeating a powerful boss to move to the next area is nothing but a trap. But if Wang's NPC and gear are handed over to Thunder Kid, that will cause problems too. Smiling, Duweu says it's fine because no matter how many tokens a player has, he's still just a player, and in the end, you will have to follow his rules. Back in the lava zone, Wan and the one-eyed boy are about to clash. Mocking, the protagonist's opponent says that Wang depends on powerful weapons and allies to win, while he is 1 level above. Countering, our boy says that if the guy thinks that's enough to win, then he's nothing but a rookie. Thinking to himself, Thunder wonders what kind of trick Wang is trying to pull. The protagonist, even without reading minds, warns that he's about to witness the grand conquest of the Shattered Stars. Smiling while being attacked, his opponent asks if this is his final battle, and then asks him not to hurt him too much. Suddenly, the evil boy notices the ground is cracking, but it's too late, and he falls into the lava. Reflecting, the protagonist says that if he were a lower-level guy, that move would have been enough, but now he's not so sure. Suddenly, a large glowing blue sphere appears and someone begins calling his name. The villain boy reappears, revealing he activated the Thunder God form, which makes him 90% immune to natural environment damage. Watching, Moriarty says he didn't expect Thunder to have such a big trump card, while Duweu says everything's going according to plan. The old man then questions whether a normal player and a level 2 NPC combined won't cause the boy to lose consciousness. Back to the battle, we see Wang just got slapped, while his opponent, now Zeus, says he came to take revenge. Luckily for our boy, Kaiser's curse saves him. Now his only question is how to deal with the possessed boy. On her knees, Ji Xufu says her ally must have noticed that Thunder's state won't last forever. In that case, as the strongest Valkyrie, she should be the one to stop him. Zeus prepares to deliver his final blow, saying that this time nothing will save Wang from his fate. but he's caught by surprise by a sword that appears out of nowhere and hits him directly. Standing, the ally of our boy declares she'll never allow him to succeed. Furious, he asks how she dares attack a god and doesn't even notice Sasaki is behind him, eyes filled with blood. Attacking without hesitation, the girl says that her Bushido slays gods and Buddhas. Aishobe and Xiaomen go check on Wang, and the little girl reveals she had to bite her tongue really hard to break Zeus' effect. Still alive, Thunder says it doesn't matter how many people help our boy, he won't leave that place alive. The protagonist then gets up and confidently says he's already figured out how to defeat him because the law of victory has already been set. Changing clothes, his opponent says that as long as he's Zeus, he won't be defeated. Coming up with a strategy, Wang concludes that he needs to separate the boy from the god to be able to win. He just needs to know where to hit. Charging in, the hero says he's already discovered the weakness of the boy who wholeheartedly believes he is Zeus. The enemy defends himself with his weapon, claiming he is the perfect, omniscient, omnipotent king of the gods and without weaknesses. Proving him wrong, Jake Sufu appears and gets ready to attack because she can't waste the opportunity created by her contractor. Kicking Thunder, she says that's the price to pay for making a Valkyrie kneel. Due to the precise blow, the boy screams in pain, when suddenly an explosion happens at the spot he was kicked, leaving him in despair. Our heroes watch anxiously to see if they finally won, but Wang widens his eyes when he sees that the enemy is still standing. Surprised, Sasaki says she didn't expect the vice president of the Imperial Glory Guild to have such a small secret. Irritated and missing part of his pants, Thunder screams, ordering them to stop mocking him. Xiaobe covers Xiaomen's eyes. Wang then says that now that the boy has no health, no mana, and can't use Zeus' power, it's time to begin. Trying to save himself, the boy says his guild will come after him, but the protagonist says he's not afraid of a mere guild. Buying time, Thunder claims that if the boy spares him, he'll transfer all his slavery contracts to him, which includes all the elves that were up for auction, and they can serve him however he wishes. He just needs to let him go for now. Showing no intention of accepting, Wang asks if the boy at least knows how many NPCs he'd harmed. Screaming, Thunder says he was only trying to make his life in the apocalypse a little more pleasant. Our boy then says that deep down he's not entirely wrong, because forcing all players to obsess over saving the world isn't all that realistic either. So their mindset is exactly wrong. Sometime later, we find out that Wang ended Thunder's life. Taking a fragment of Zeus, he states that its effect is really good. He can feel its strength just by putting it in his bag. Jake Sufu approaches and says the boy needs to be careful with the fragment, otherwise her personality might be affected. Our boy tells the girl not to worry and says that despite everything, that move of combining with an NPC was pretty cool. Annoyed, the girl says she never agreed to do that with him. Suddenly, a voice from the radio informs the players that the time has come and asks if the labyrinth adventures were smooth. Now, Duyu will announce the 4 players who will continue in the competition. First place, of course, goes to Wang, who will receive 12,500 points. Our boy is startled when a spotlight shines on his head. Second and third place go to Sasaki and Xiaomen, who will receive 6,500 and 6,900 points respectively. The last place goes to Mammon, who will receive 5,800 points. Hearing her name, the girl wonders how she won. The girl she saved approaches and says she's sorry she can't return the favor anymore. Duyu then announces that the remaining players will be automatically banned from the labyrinth, like Aridel and his partner. Confused, the blonde boy wonders what happened to Thunder, who wasn't announced as a winner despite having many points. Then remembers that he'll definitely be punished by Eiju when he gets home. Outside the labyrinth, Moriarty asks if Duyu wasn't being too kind, and he replies that it's one way to look at it. The old man then says most players easily completed the first phase and most of the traps weren't even lethal. So he shouldn't play dumb, since an NPC of his level should understand that everyone is a character who must follow the rhythm of the music. But in this global fusion, Jake Sufu and others are seen as just and kind, whereas the villains only help the game world. Since his persona is based on the villain from the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, he won't do anything good. But Duyu's character is based on a comedy movie protagonist and is still considered greedy and cunning. Annoyed, the man with glasses asks if the old man is going to deduce his purpose like his former rival would. But if he doesn't want to answer, he can only say he'll make the most of everything he can use, no matter how useless it may be. The old man then says he'll take his leave because he needs to prepare to receive Wan. That's when we see our boy in another place, wondering if he's reached the final stage. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.